boy, Mickey V, huh? You're in a little bit of trouble tonight because before we started to eat, Richard Farnham, aka Big Daddy, and Grady Vino, one of tonight's inductees, were talking. Richard was castigating Grady for Grady's apparel tonight. Always a very formal guy. Rick was saying, you know, where's your tie? And then Rick turned to me and he said, look at Holiday. He's got a suit on, and he's a Pine Street guy. Rick almost didn't get a chance to give his speech tonight because I almost popped him right here. We Pine Street guys were pretty tough. I wanted to thank the committee that chose tonight's inductees. Phil Danowich is down there somewhere. Phil, a little ways maybe. There he is. Great athlete himself who belongs in this Hall of Fame. More about that later on. Bart Freeman. Arthur will be inducted next year. Yes. We're delayed because of COVID here. Art is the first person to win in a dual capacity as a coach and as an athlete. So congratulations, Arthur. Kenny Tatro, who was nervous. So badly about giving a speech tonight that he was not sleeping well. I said, Kenny, go to bed. We'll fix this up, and we did. Dana Sprague. Dana played baseball for me back in the 1970s. Don't ask him about that. Scott Nadeau, who played football for me. Barb Barrett, who recused herself and did not vote her way into the Hall of Fame. Wendy Randall, I still call her. She was a female athlete of the year, BUHS 1968. I now know how old you are, Wendy. I was on the committee also, and Dave Henry, who I just have to thank enormously for the fundraising efforts, and we need to thank his wife Barb, because Dave was sitting at home having cocktails on his comfort chair in front of his TV until Barb said, "Get off your," and boy did he. He just was a tremendous, tremendous fundraiser for this group. And my wife Lyle, who called Dana, I was in the hospital in the middle of the summer, and she got nervous that this banquet might be in trouble. And she called Dana. Dana set up a meeting, and she did all the finances. Did a spectacular job. My wife Lyle. Some of our major sponsors, Zephyrs, down on Main Street, they allowed us for 5-6 weeks, Dana, to feature this event with our banner and memorabilia. We thank them, John Clements. The American Legion for hosting us tonight. Thank you very much. Howard Printing that put together the programs that are at your place settings. They're yours. Take it home with you. There's one for every one of you here tonight. Lotus Graphics did our plaques for us that each of the recipients will be getting tonight. Wyndham Flowers for the flower arrangements here. And BCTV, they're filming tonight's event, and it'll be available in a short time, as soon as I get them some things. Reggie Martell, my nephew, he's running what you're looking at. He's put that together in the last few days. I made a couple of slideshows. He converted them into films and put appropriate music. You can blame me if you don't like the music. They're all things that I put together. And all of you for coming here today. It's a great turnout, despite the trying conditions. Thank you all very much. I'm sure the inductees appreciate your being here tonight. This is the inaugural class, and I was going to make some remarks about that, but I'm going to defer to Coach Sawyer, the athletic director of Brattleboro Union High School. He wrote such a magnificent piece, and it overlapped with some of the remarks that I had. I'll let him deliver them.
Some people have asked about the title of this organization, BHS/BUHS Hall of Fame. BUHS was Brattleboro High School until 1951, 1952. And some of the people who are going into the Hall of Fame wouldn't recognize BUHS, but they do recognize BHS. So that's why the name is what it is. The committee only acted on the people that were presented to it. Our process is you need to be nominated. So if you can think of somebody who should be here, I've just made a few examples. Peter LaFlamme, for example, belongs in this Hall of Fame. Jeff Dixon, Pam Packard, Heather Nelson. These are all in my opinion. Huey Barber, who was a state champion in golf and retired the famed Wing Trophy at Harris Hill here. Chris, oh, you didn't go too far. All right. Come on forward. Chris Sawyer, the athletic director at Brattleboro Union High School, with some hesitation, agreed to come and speak tonight, and I'm grateful for that, and for you, Chris. Come ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tonight we gathered to celebrate and honor great athletes, coaches, and teams, all of whom have helped motivate numerous men and women into helping become the people that they are today. I've been asked to say a few words on behalf of the BHS Athletic Department, and I appreciate this opportunity because I'm humbled as I'm surrounded by such an outstanding group of people who've contributed so much to our high school. The body of work presented by this group has served to inspire and shape BHS athletics and will continue to do so for many years ahead. Over time, while many individuals will be inducted into the BHS Hall of Fame, this class of inductees will stand out as our inaugural class. As such, this class is special. It's the first class. With the opening of this Hall of Fame, we bring attention to the countless examples of excellence over the long and rich history of our great school and community. The individuals that we honor tonight and their contributions have served to inspire our present-day student athletes and coaches, some who are in attendance tonight. And you are a reminder of what makes Brattleboro Brattleboro. You know, you remind us of who we are and what we can become in the future. So while this Hall of Fame recognizes individuals who have made a name for themselves, it also highlights the greatness that has and will continue to come out of the BUHS community. Events such as these serve as a bridge from the past to the future, and the individuals being honored tonight allow us to recognize the best of the best and help give our current students and families a blueprint for success. Sharing in the moment tonight is special for me because I was born in the summer of 1966, and fortunately for myself and my family, my father accepted a teaching and coaching job in Brattleboro that summer. Tagging along with my dad as much as I could, BUHS has, been a second home to me from an early age. And I've listened to stories of Ernie Johnson and Ray Smith and Peter Ferradoni and, of course, the legendary 1965 football team. I grew up watching Grady Vignew and Joe Shield and David McGinn play multiple sports and excel in multiple sports. I was able to meet and learn from outstanding men such as Coach Zelenakis and Coach Nadowich. And I was a classmate of Barb Barrett. Jan Carlson and Heather Pancake had phenomenal careers at BUHS, and like Barb, They built a legacy created by the Girls Athletic Association in the 1967, 1968 field hockey and girls basketball teams. All of these athletes either epitomize the term student athlete or define the true meaning of teacher and coach. However, nobody being honored tonight is being honored because of their athletic prowess alone. Many people will be athletic over the years. These individuals are being honored because of their character and because they all had the heart and drive to do something that can impact someone else's life positively. It is this combination of ability and character that our current students, athletes, and coaches can learn from and build upon, and that has left an everlasting mark on our athletic history. I want to thank the BHS Athletic Hall of Fame Committee for their dedicated work and commitment and to making this Hall of Fame and tonight's event a reality. Obviously, it takes a lot of work by many people to make something like this happen. And in particular, I want to acknowledge Bill Holliday. I knew Coach Holliday as part of my dad's coaching staff when he was coaching, and then I played on Coach's first football team in 1981 when he took over the program. And like many of the people in attendance tonight, Coach Holliday has been a fixture in our lives. Since his own days as a student athlete at BUHS, Coach Holliday has been a vital and contributing part of our high school athletic program and community. His great appreciation for history and his belief in supporting the endeavors of our young students and athletes led to this. So thank you, Coach Holliday. In closing, while we recognize the achievements of a number of individuals, I also want to say congratulations to everyone celebrating here with us tonight. Nobody achieves great things alone. Besides athletics, one thing our inductees share tonight is that they're supported by friends, family, and former teammates. That common bond that is high school sports is a constant, and the relationships that you've formed stay with you always. Tonight is not only a tribute to our inductees, but also to the people who have supported the hard work, hopes, and dreams of everyone being honored tonight. Your support and sacrifice is recognized and appreciated, and this evening's event is a testament to that as well. Again, on behalf of the Brattleboro Union High School Athletic Department and our school community, I wish to congratulate the inaugural Hall of Fame inductees and wish you all a night filled with reminiscence, laughter, and pride, because it's well deserved. So, thank you.
You know what? I'll keep my remarks in the proper order, and I'll introduce for you tonight BUHS graduate, a fine athlete himself, went on to play football at the University of Vermont. Eventually, among many other things in his career, became the athletic director at the University of Vermont, and I asked him to be the keynote speaker tonight, and he agreed. I first met this guy. I probably met him as a Little League player because his dad was my coach, and his brother played with me. What'd you do with Rob? Oh yeah, he's down there, all right. Who I always called Rab, not Rob. But anyway, so we'd probably met before that, but Coach Natowich said to me when I was in 8th grade, he says, "You're playing Legion baseball." Okay, you never questioned Coach Natowich. You did what he told you. Okay, so I went to play, and I ended up being the second baseman on the Legion team, and Rick Farnham was the first baseman. And I'll never forget the way he took me under his wing. He was in his last year, I think, of American Legion ball. Here I was, this kid that was barely shaving at the time, and Rick treated me so well. I don't know who invented it, where it came from, but we all called him Big Daddy. He was a bigger guy then than he is now, I think, because you were playing tackle. But Big Daddy is our keynote speaker. Welcome, please. Big Daddy Rick Farnham.
I just had to tell Bill where first base was. Just get the ball, throw it to me. Okay. No, he's a great athlete, and it was a pleasure to have him as a young man on our team. But first of all, good evening to everyone, and I'd like to begin by thanking the Hall of Fame for having the idea and the inception of this institution. and especially Bill for asking me probably 18 months ago if I'd do this. And I'm doing it. I'm glad to be here. I'm missing my own football team's reunion this weekend in Burlington, and my wife is at her college reunion with her friends in Rhode Island. But I'm happy to be here just to see the faces and some of the names and people that I grew up with and have watched over the years. Congratulations to this year's class of inductees, and I hope that my remarks have some meaning to everyone here, but I'm really prefacing the first part of my remarks to the inductees. One of the most enriching facets of my life and profession was the opportunity to meet some of the great athletes of the world, from this country, from Oscar Robertson to Roger Staubach to even the great Jesse Owens, and along with Presidents George Bush and Ronald Reagan, because they would attend the meetings and the ceremonies we'd have within the NCAA, and you'd have a chance to go up and talk with them. It was a great aspect of what I got to accomplish. But if I said I'd like to talk to you about Clive Charles, every one of you out there is going, who? Clive Charles. Let me tell you a little bit about Clive Charles, and this is the one story that I'll tell. Clive Charles was an Englishman who played soccer in the World Cup in Wembley Stadium in London, probably the greatest soccer venue in the world. And he played twice. Clive Charles also, after that, came to the United States and became one of the winningest soccer coaches in this country, winning 400 games for the University, or Portland University. He played in 2 World Cup championships, and he had a Scottish, or I don't know what, teammate that came to him and said, you've been in this situation a couple of times, lad, haven't you? And he said, yes, I have. And he says, what do you remember about the first game? And he goes, not a thing. He says, shame on you, lad. Shame on you. You didn't create a memory for yourself. And you do that today, and you'll have a lifetime of wonderful thoughts. I'll tell you what you do. You go out there, and you pick up the grass, and you rub it in your hands, and you throw it in the wind, and you see which way it goes. You smell it. You look in the crowd, and you see somebody with a color that you like. And maybe you know them, maybe you don't. And he says, walk up to an opponent, see his number and say, I'm guarding you today, and ask his name and shake his hand. And you'll remember these things for the rest of your life, and you'll create a memory that'll hold you good in good days and bad. And that's what you have to do. You have to be conscious of what you're doing, lad. Now go out there and have yourself a wonderful moment. And he told us that story on the eve of the NCAA championships in 1999. All 4 teams were there at the banquet. And he told that story, and I never forgot it. Never forgot it. And I had a classmate of mine who became a coach at UVM of the national championship ski teams that we had. And he said, you know, Rick, life is made up of a collection of wonderful moments. And if you choose to remember them, you have a treasury that you have for the rest of your life. And isn't it true? So I'm asking you inductees, hope you can make tonight a treasured moment for yourself. Look around, who's at your table? Who have you heard talk? Whatever it takes, but create a memory. Well, that was great advice from my coach, and I've tried to do that. Who's at your table? I've got to turn my page here. So we're here at the first inaugural Hall of Fame induction at Brattleboro High School. How come? What's the purpose? What's it all about? If we're going to answer those questions, we got to begin by asking ourselves, why sports? Why organized athletics? What's gained by the participants? My own reasoning thinks that sports is more than a game. It's more than a contest. They're a venue through which you learn life's lessons. And they come from the teachings overtly of coaches, officials, teammates, moms and dads. And if you learn those lessons, it carries you well for the rest of your life. Sports also provides a framework for the development of soft skills. By soft skills, I mean things like perseverance, that helps you identify your weaknesses, your failures, and gives you strength to work on them until they become assets. Every one of us started playing and we weren't great at whatever we started, and we worked at it. You worked probably harder than I did. Soft skills like demonstrating one's integrity by playing your sport within the rules of the game assist the athlete in becoming a responsible citizen. And that's one of the cardinal principles of education, responsibility of your citizenship. The self-realization that you have been changed. Sport changes you. That means education has taken place. And what does it change? It changes your knowledge, your skills, your attitudes, and behaviors. You played for Andy, you changed your behavior faster, you were gone. I'll tell you about that later. If you're fortunate, you change your values. And the only way you change your values is you have a significant emotional experience. In our lives, we've all had them. They can be traumatic things, they can be devastating things, they can be wonderful moments. And sports provides all those things. So you change your values. You decide what's the most important thing in life to you. It's not hitting a home run, I'll tell you that. I know one thing for sure. Sports teaches us that hard work, a positive attitude, and initiative may lead to success. What is guaranteed and what I'm sure of is that without these qualities evident in your development, failure to reach your goals is almost guaranteed. You need to work hard, you need to have initiative, and you need to have a right attitude. You know when these notions come clear to us? Usually when we can't play anymore. We finally sit down and say, what did we learn? What did we gain from all this participation? I've been involved for years now. I'm 75. I've been involved for over almost 70 years in the sport. And you're still figuring out what it is you learn. And so when you're all done playing, you sit down and you say, what did I gain? And you start thinking about these things that I've just mentioned. But upon reflection, you know this. It wasn't about the scores of the game. You can't remember 90% of them. It wasn't about championships won. It's not about hitting home runs, shooting a three-point shot, winning a 100-yard dash. It's not about all those things. It teaches us the difference between the concepts of winning and losing and the more difficult achievement of striving for excellence all the time. Forget the winning and the losing, as long as you're striving to be the best you can and you're working at it. That's what it teaches us. It teaches us it teaches us that most of what anyone accomplishes is a result of a cumulative effort, a combination from your teammates, your coaches. It's not just about you. And the one thing that all of us have gained from our experience, and the greatest value of athletics and sport, are the relationships. You're here at tables with teammates, friends, families, and the relationships that you've established are because you all have the commonality of the love of sport. And why does that happen? It happens because you're in a group that cares about you, and they demonstrated that care. And they demonstrated a respect for you, respect for your skills, respect the fact that you were a teammate, whether you were a star or not. You were a teammate. You were of value to them. I've heard coaches say the most important guy on this team doesn't exist. We're all the same. We're all equal. We're all part of this team, from the top quarterback to the manager. That's what it teaches us. The relationships between teammates often become a bonding experience that lasts a lifetime. There was a movie called Stand By Me. Richard Dreyfuss was the narrator of the movie. Some of you know it, some of you don't. But in that movie, Richard Dreyfuss narrated the line that probably the greatest and most significant and lasting friendships are the ones you made while you were a youth. Sport is a youthful game. We all played during our youth. and you think back of your friendships and your relationships, and they stem from those opportunities as a youth. So, we've all been given God-given talents, but some of us work harder than others at different aspects of getting to become as good as we can be. We celebrate the distinguished accomplishments of the inductees this evening. We also celebrate and recognize their accomplishments are a reason for us to take pride in their exploits and pride in our community that reaches beyond this town into the state and beyond what some of you have accomplished across the nation. We take pride in that. We've created a mindfulness through the Hall of Fame's conception that validates the notion by distinguishing ourselves in whatever the field. Your efforts are appreciated and will be held in high esteem and praised by society. There's a lesson right there. If you're good at anything, you'll be recognized and praised through society. We set goals. First of all, we take our talent, we set goals, we identify the responsibilities to meet those goals, what we have to do, we create a strategy, a game plan, we initiate those actions, and if they're good, we stick with it. If they're not, we reevaluate and we change. And isn't that a blueprint for what a community is? So sport and athletics and competition is a better example of community, or is as good an example of community that I can think of, because you have to do all those things, and that's what a community does. And certainly this community has done it, and done it well. I'm going to ask you a favor. Every one of you here, those of you who teach or coach or discuss sports with your sons, your daughters, your grandsons, your granddaughters, your next door neighbor, kids around the block, if you discuss sports with them, I want you to tell them about a couple of things. Help them to develop their athletic skills and knowledges, but convey to them the real values of what they're experiencing. Friendships, perseverance, integrity, all those things that we can call soft skills. But more than anything, I want you to tell them to have fun. We all got into these things because it was fun. And we've lost track of that in America. We're not having as much fun with our youth when your grandson can play 1 year and say, I don't want to play anymore. What are you talking about? You're 8 years old. What do you mean? You got to like that. I didn't have any fun. And it's the leaders, it's the coaches, it's the teachers, it's the moms and dad that create that environment of fun. And that's what we have to do. So kids will start and continue to participate in the things that you and I love. So that's my favor to ask you. Help them to create a positive memory that they will hold in their treasury for the rest of their lives. God bless all of you. And it's so great to be here. Thank you.
So let's induct some people into the BHS, BUHS Athletic Hall of Fame. People have been designated or requested, volunteered, or, well, they're going to do the honors of introducing to you the inductees. And the first of those people is a protege of the inductee who requested the opportunity to introduce our first inductee, and that is Spencer Knickerbocker.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the BUHS Athletic Hall of Fame Committee for putting on this awesome event that's giving recognition to some really amazing athletes that have grown up and lived in Brattleboro. I think it's a really cool thing to honor people that really grew a lot in this community and grew through athletics. My name is Spencer Knickerbocker. I grew up here in Brattleboro, and I'm incredibly honored and excited to be introducing tonight's first inductee, Dana Zelenakis. For those of you that know Dana, I'm sure you will agree that there's not a more deserving candidate, not only because of his athletic accomplishments, but because of the impact Dana has had on so many of our lives, not only through sports, but through our education and friendship. While Dana has been active and involved in many areas of athletics, such as at BUHS or golfing or water skiing, his accomplishments as a ski jumper are exceptionally noteworthy. During the peak of Dana's ski jumping career, he represented the United States on the world stage in many international competitions, a feat many younger jumpers in Brattleboro could only dream of, and probably many other athletes. You know, coming from a small town in Vermont, there's not many people that make it to the pinnacle of sport. And to be able to do that is incredibly, incredibly noteworthy. Dana started ski jumping, much like myself, when he was 7 years old at the Brattleboro Outing Club Junior Jumping Program at the Living Memorial Park. After graduating from high school in 1966, Dana attended Canaan College in Canaan, New Hampshire, and was a member of the Canaan College ski team. Upon graduation from college in 1970, Dana was drafted into the U.S. Army and served for 3 years as an optical lab specialist at Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Denver, Colorado. While in the service, which is also exceptionally noteworthy that he was able to combine this, Dana was also a member of the United States ski team and was a member of the 1972 U.S. Olympic team in Sapporo, Japan. After an honorable discharge from the Army in 1973, Dana moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota to continue his ski jumping career. Dana then returned to school at the University of Minnesota to become a teacher and taught for 1 year at Lincoln High School in Bloomington, Minnesota. And then in 1979, Dana returned to Brattleboro, Vermont, where he taught for the next 30 years at BUHS and Brattleboro Area Middle School. Dana has stayed very involved in ski jumping while in Brattleboro, coaching the Brattleboro Outing Club Junior Jumping Program, where I got my start. He was the director of the Harris Hill Ski Jump Committee. And Dana still lives in Brattleboro and is still very involved with Harris Hill Ski Jumping competition. Dana has been actively involved in the sport of ski jumping for over 60 years as a competitor, a coach, a competition director, and a volunteer. I just want to briefly highlight some of Dana's accomplishments. He was a member of the Eastern Ski Team from 1965 through 68. He was a member of the United States Ski Team from 1968 through 1972. In 1968, Dana placed 9th in the United States at the U.S. Olympic Trials, then 7th in Iron Mountain, Michigan. I believe that was in 1969. And in 1969, Dana first competed in Europe in Lahti, Finland. 1970, Dana competed in Planica, Slovenia, and at the Holmenkollen in Oslo, Norway, one of the most pristine, amazing venues, and really these venues are the pinnacle of ski jumping in the world. Then in 1972, Dana was 4th in the U.S. Olympic trials, which gave him a spot on the 1972 Olympic team in Sapporo, Japan. So that kind of brings us to my personal story for how I got to know Dana. And it was in autumn 2003, there was a flyer posted, and I don't even remember where, but it was for the junior ski jumping program in Brattleboro that Dana was resurrecting after, I don't know how many years, but there was a hiatus there, probably since the early to mid 90s. Growing up in Brattleboro, I had always attended Harris Hill Ski Jump every year. I watched the Olympics on television, and I just thought ski jumping was the coolest sport. It's probably one of the most breathtaking, amazing, beautiful sports, thinking about skiers flying 300 feet in the air, even farther than that, just on a pair of skis. So I had to sign up, obviously. And I remember still the first night I showed up at this little ski jump at Memorial Park. We used to jump at nighttime, and it was December 2003, and I was just in awe. I was scared. I was nervous. I really had no idea what I was getting myself into, but Dana had this small ski jump prepared beautifully. The hill was illuminated by floodlights, and immediately I was hooked. And I was scared, but Dana welcomed me with his warm smile, which is something that those who know Dana, I hope, are well familiar with. And I really felt like this was the thing that I belonged in. And it was because of Dana and Dana's energy into this program that I found probably the greatest passion in my life. It's really difficult to convey how meaningful an impact Dana has had on me, and I'm sure on other people. Becoming a ski jumper was a dream come true to me, and Dana helped cultivate a passion and fire for progressing in the sport. And, you know, growing up in Brattleboro, there were not a lot of ski jumpers when I started, and it was really difficult to see where the sport was going to take me and how I was going to get there. And there were a lot of hurdles to tackle to progress and improve. I had to travel places, but Dana was always that guiding force and encouraging me. And every time I had a good jump or improved on something, Dana had that same grin on his face. And like Dana accomplished so much in the sport that I could only dream of, like competing at Harris Hill, being on the US ski team, traveling in Europe, going to the Olympics. I wanted all of that. I wanted to be an Olympic champion. I didn't know if any of that was ever going to come true, but some of it came true. I wasn't an Olympic champion, but I got to compete on the world stage. And for coming from a little town like Brattleboro under Dana's tutelage, I think that's pretty amazing that I was able to progress through the sport from Dana's guidance and accomplish more than I ever dreamed of. I mentioned earlier when listing Dana's athletic accomplishments that his first time ever traveling and competing in Europe was to the city of Lahti, Finland, for the Lahti Ski Games and then the Finnish Ski Week, which is a series of competitions that take place in Finland in probably late February, early March. And like I said, this was Dana's first time in the big leagues, competing in Europe with some of the biggest competitions on the world stage. And I remember when I was a little kid jumping at the Memorial Park, Dana was telling me about these ski jumps in Lahti, Finland, and how they're illuminated at night, and they're these massive towers. They're not like Harris Hill. They're literally built out of concrete and steel, and they tower above this small Finnish city. And I could imagine, like, wow, that sounds really daunting. I don't think I could ever do that. And not to mention, there's also thousands and thousands of spectators. There's a stadium at the bottom of these jumps that fit 50,000 spectators, and it's full when they have competitions. And then, funnily enough, in February 2012, it was my first year out of high school, and I was on the first of 4 gap years until I went to college, so I could compete and train full time. And I started skiing pretty well in February, and I finally got the call up to go to Europe and compete. And it was something I never thought was going to happen growing up jumping in Brattleboro. It just seemed beyond my wildest dreams that I was going to get to compete on the US ski team. And funnily enough, the first place I ever went, like Dana, was Lahti, Finland. And I just figured that out a week ago. And I just think it's so cool that us 2 guys growing up in Brattleboro got to the world stage, and we ended up getting sent to the same place, probably just as nervous as I was going to our first international competitions. And I just think it's really cool. And it's because of Dana that I got there. So I no longer really pursue ski jumping as seriously as I once did. Once a year, I do jump at Harris Hill, and I hope I can do it again. It's been a while. But there's this one constant, and when I do have a good jump, and Dana's at the bottom of the hill or wherever he is, he still has this big grin on his face. Just like when I would do something right at the Memorial Park or have a good jump. And I think it takes us both back to, you know, those times of having good jumps and being at Memorial Park together. So I can't say thank you enough, but thank you, Dana. Ski jumping changed my life, and it's because of you. and congratulations.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Spencer, for those wonderful words. I think you kind of embellished that a little bit, but anyway, thank you. And I want everyone to know that I have jumped some of the largest jumps in the world and never have been this nervous that I am right now. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Spencer. I'm very humbled and honored to be here tonight. I think every young athlete has dreams of being a professional athlete or on an Olympic team. And every has-been athlete dreams of being immortalized on a Hall of Fame or in a Hall of Fame. And I've been very blessed to have been chosen for both. I'd like to thank Doug Kroc, who nominated me. I'm not sure who put him up to it, but he couldn't be here tonight, and Spencer stood up for him, and I thank Spencer very much for all his kind words. And then, just an aside, Spencer has started the Marlboro Ski Club, and within that is the Billy Koch League. And the Billy Koch League is where they teach kids to cross-country ski. And also I'd like to, Todd Einig is not here, but he's reviewing or reviving the junior jumping program. So both those guys need to be congratulated for carrying on and making sure that everything continues. I watched the documentary just recently on Muhammad Ali, and he has written on his gravestone, "Service to others is rent you pay for your room in heaven." And I think Spencer and Todd are well on their way to their room in heaven. I'd like to thank Bill Holliday and his team for all their work, the vision that he has had to establish this Hall of Fame. He's had a lot of obstacles, the pandemic. This whole thing was supposed to start last year at this time, and because of the pandemic, it didn't. And for those of you that don't know, Bill had some serious health issues over the past year, and to see this thing come off, there's a lot of credit to Bill and his team for making this happen. So congratulations to you, Bill, for I would be remiss if I didn't thank all my coaches, Coach Nadowich, who I'd probably be a very wealthy man right now if I had a nickel for every time he asked me why I was hiding between the blades of grass. Art Freeman, Bob Rounds, Carl Tenney, these are all high school coaches that I had when I played football and skied and ran track. Art actually said if I ran any slower, I'd probably been going backwards. But and then my ski jumping coaches from the beginning are Alan Sargent, Phil Dunham, Tink Austin, Millington Dix, and then in college Roger Dion, and on the U.S. ski team Art Tokel, Lloyd Severud, and many others that I can't even name. I'd also like to congratulate all the other inductees tonight for their athletic accomplishments, and it's a great thing. So my wife said to keep it short. So thank you everyone for coming and honoring myself and the other inductees. I'm truly honored and humbled to be here up before you tonight. So thank you very much.
Next to nothing was said about the fact that Dana was a superb high school football player, all-state football player his senior year, and he was on the 1965 state championship team. And we still haven't spelt his name right. 3 times. I think it's correct in the program, however, so that's the right spelling. I hope. Is it Zuki?
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, it's on, okay, good. All right. Also on that 1965 state football championship was one of Brattleboro's superb athletes. Played in the backfield, halfback, alongside Ray Smith, who's being inducted tonight. And his senior year, his father decided to make him the quarterback, and he was unbelievable. And when you think back of a kid who hadn't played quarterback, how quickly he adapted to it, to the point of even questioning some of his father's own calls and changing plays. Zuki, Art Freeman, some of the others of us here, who would ever change something that Coach Natowich sent onto the field? The answer to that question is Phil Natowich. Phil, come on up, please.
Thank you, Bill, for making this whole thing possible. And thank you, Richard, for nominating our team. It was a really special year 56 years ago. It rained every Friday. And every Saturday, it was bright sunshine and a dry track. And it was just... I mean, things just fall into place sometimes. Tonight, I followed Dana. And 56 years ago, I was following Dana down the field. And Dana and our superb line made everything so easy for the backfield. It was just special. When Bill asked me or told me that somebody needed to introduce the team, I was reminded that 56 years ago, the day before our home opener pep rally, Andy brought 3 of us together, the tri-captains, Don Robinson, Jerry Morrison, and myself, and said, tomorrow we're having a pep rally, so you guys need to say something at the pep rally. And Donnie immediately said, no, I'm not going to talk. And Jerry said, well, I'll say a few words. And I don't recall the 3 words that Jerry spoke, but he spoke with conviction. And so it was left to me to be the example of it's not such a great idea to speak and be thought the fool. So you're stuck with a fool tonight. So Donnie's role back then was to be the face of the team, handsome and athletic, and he would just stand here. And then Jerry would be the menacing, tough football player, and I would be the fool who would speak. So they couldn't be here tonight, so once again, you're stuck with a fool. Bill asked if I would prepare, a short speech, but my track record with speeches is not that good. So the last one I prepared was for my younger daughter's wedding, and when I was finished and sat down, I realized I had not thanked the groom's family. So I thought, well, maybe I better not prepare a speech. Maybe I better just go and pick raspberries. So this afternoon I decided to go out and pick raspberries. And while I was out there, I kept thinking about, well, gee, I should think about something because Bill wants me to talk a little bit. But I kept thinking, and it was such a beautiful day, and I said, 56 years ago, it was just like this on every Saturday. Every Saturday, it was just beautiful. And I would be picking raspberries, and as all you native Vermonters know, there's a certain protocol in picking berries. You pick 6 and you eat one, and then you pick 6 more and you eat another one. And after a quart or so, I got to thinking. I said, the little raspberries taste just as good as the big raspberries. And it reminded me of a day at practice when, it must have been Coach Freeman, because Andy would not wax poetic. Andy was a little more direct. But so I think it was Art who called the offense together, and we were a very physically small group of 15, 16, 17-year-olds. We had one player who topped the scales at 200 pounds. But Art and Andy, I think they recognized that we were not physically large, but we were quick. And so they built the whole offense around our strengths and didn't worry about our weaknesses. But anyways, Art brought us together and he said, you guys need to realize, and a lot of people are talking about how small you are physically. He said, but it's not how big you are, it's how big you play. And it just kind of reminded me, those little raspberries tasted just as good as those big raspberries. And as the day went on, I thought, geez, maybe I should have sat down and written a speech, but I think I'll go with an audible. So I'd like to thank Art and Andy, who's not here, for recognizing the individuals and the group as a whole, a team of a bunch of, I can still think of Andy saying, what are we going to do with these midgets? How can we make a football team out of these bunch of midgets? And he might not have said it quite so nicely, but it was Art's job to tone Andy down and be the psychologist of the coaching staff, and Andy would worry about the X's and O's. But I want to thank Arthur and Andy and for recognizing our strengths and playing to our strengths. And without that, we would have just been another midget team. And so it was really, thank you very much, Art. And there's another person, when I look at the photo of the team, I can remember the names of all, I know the names are there, but I can remember the names of all our my teammates and starters, but the underclassmen, without the printed word, I couldn't remember all the names. But I noticed that there was one face or one person for me who played a very integral part in our team who's not pictured here, and that was Bob Rounds. Bob was a guidance counselor, and he was at the junior high, and he was Andy's advanced scout. And every week he would go and watch our opponent for the following week and come back and give Andy a report. And it was just amazing what a great job Bob Rounds did. And he should somehow be put into this photo some way. Without his knowledge, we would not have been as well prepared, and as quick as we were even better prepared than anyone else, and it was all in Bob Rounds' doing. And there are some other members of the team, so can I ask them to come up and just stand here and say?
Actually, call them up. Phil will let them take the plaque. And I have a brief comment because of your comments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I know David's here. I know Rob is here. I know Chris Field is here. Dana's here. Would you teammates please come up? I think Dwayne's back there.
So they can fight over who gets to hang this plaque in their house, but I'm going to give it to Phil today, and they can draw straws.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dave.
Before we bring up our next introducer, I want to share a story about Phil Nadowich. He's talking about how quick that 1965 football team was. And I was on it, sort of, as a sophomore. And we went to Rutland for the third game of the year. And the Rutland Herald legendary reporter, Charlie Spencer, wrote an article about how the Colonels were going to get beat that week. Rutland was a preseason favorite, along with Burlington, to win the state championship. And Coach Nadowich, I don't know how many newspapers he bought, but they ended up going around that bus. And one of Charlie's remarks was, "This is the day that Coach Nadowich limps back to his 15 Maple Street villa, and the transition falls out of Brattleboro." We beat them 39-6. I wasn't supposed to play. I was with Dwayne Holmquist and Wayne Austin over on the sidelines. And on the first play of the third game, Dennis Smith from the Marina restaurant got stepped on and broke his hand. Now, he was the fullback. Dave Merrill, who's here, was one of the halfbacks, an excellent football player. Say nothing of ski jumper, Dave. And the other halfback was Dennis Robinson, who scored 25 touchdowns in 8 games, playing half a game because the scores were so lopsided. He broke his hand. He was the fullback. I was a halfback behind Dave Merrill. I wasn't going to play. I'm down there at the end of the bench, and all of a sudden I hear, "Holiday!" I said, "What does he want?" I hustled over to Coach Nadowich, football helmet in hand, and he said, "Go on in the game." For Dennis Smith, I never played one play in my life at fullback. I didn't know anything. So I line up, and every play out of the huddle, in the film you could see it, film of Phil Nadowich turning his head to tell me what to do on the play, because I had no idea. Now the language is going to get just a little bit coarse here, not bad, but if you want to plug your ears or your children's ears, if there are any here. I came out of the huddle, and I was not fast like these other guys. I was not quick. And Phil said, "Just move your ass." I said, "Okay, Phil, okay." And then the film session the following Monday, Coach Nadowich had us in a classroom, and they had a play where after a fake to the fullback up the middle, which I dutifully did, and got tackled, so it must have been a pretty good fake, probably Phil's work. And all of a sudden, Coach Nadowich stops the film, 16 millimeter, after that play, and he says, "Where's the goddamn fullback?" It was me. It was me. I was supposed to, after I got knocked down or not, slide out into the middle of the field about 10 to 12 yards, turn around, and catch a pass from Phil. Of course, I never made it. Let me call up Mike Atkins, a colonel, a football player, an excellent football player, played for Coach Sawyer, and went on to, among other things, become the head coach at Mount Hermon, where I do believe he hired Coach Sawyer to be his defensive coordinator. And now, Mike, you're still working? Athletic director? Mike, where are you? Still athletic director at Keene?
Yes, I am.
Keene High. Mike Atkins, introducing Coach Darryl Sawyer. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Much appreciated.
Good evening, everyone. It's a real honor to be here. When I heard about this dinner, 18 months ago or so, from the Johnson sisters, I immediately contacted Chris Sawyer and said, would you allow me to speak on behalf of your dad? And I'm honored and thrilled that he said yes. So rather than cite his background, his resume, which would take 20 minutes up here, I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to go kind of on the soft skills direction that we heard about earlier. So this is more of a personal reflection on Darryl Sawyer. I hope you like it. To me, Darryl Sawyer was a giant. Surely not because of his stature, and not because that was his favorite NFL football team, but because he impacted so many lives over the course of his career, including many of us here tonight. Nigerian author and writer Emma Soba George once wrote, "The greatest legacy anyone can leave behind is to positively impact the lives of others. Whenever you add value to other people's lives, you are unknowingly leaving footprints on the sands of time that live on, even after your demise. They say that the best among us are remembered for 100 years or so. The rest of us are soon forgotten. The memory of past generations, like our markers, soon fade away, except for those who leave a legacy by leaving their footprints in the sands of time. I believe that Darryl Sawyer has left a lasting legacy on 3 separate levels. First of all, Coach Sawyer had a tremendous impact on me. He influenced my high school, college, and professional career paths. I am the person today because of Darryl Sawyer. In high school, he impacted me by supporting and believing in me as a student and an athlete. He helped keep me out of trouble, and he was a person that I could talk to when I needed advice. That influence on me continued into college and into my professional career path as a coach, educator, and athletic director. Coach Sawyer's impact steered me down the coaching path, and I'm happy to say that when I was named head football coach, the first thing I did was contact Coach Sawyer and hire him as my defensive coordinator. His impact on me continued as we as a football staff were able to deliver the school's first New England football championship in our 3rd season together. I know that he was proud of that championship ring that we earned, but it was largely his sage advice and his defensive philosophy that everyone does their job that carried that football program forward with continued success for many years after he stepped down. Secondly, similar to me, Coach Sawyer has impacted many, many other students at Brattleboro High School over the years. Football players, softball players, and any number of students were positively affected by him. His impact as a teacher, coach, and mentor was felt by hundreds of students at Brattleboro High School, and that impact continues and has ripple effects in the town of Brattleboro and the state of Vermont to this day. This impact will continue well into the future, and to me, this is Coach Darryl Sawyer's greatest legacy and most important reason he is being recognized by the BHS Hall of Fame. Now, thirdly, and I'm going to stretch a bit here, but I swear that this is all true. Coach Sawyer continues to have impact on the game of football at its highest level, the NFL, and most notably, the New England Patriots, and therefore, most of New England. As I mentioned, Darryl was an assistant football coach and defensive coordinator at Northfield Mount Hermon School, where he helped us instill the defensive motto, everybody does their job. We carried this motto on for years, including the 2006-2007 season, when a young man named Stephen Belichick joined the football program. Yes, this is his name, Stephen Belichick, who now is coaching with his father for the New England Patriots. Stephen also played lacrosse at Northfield Mount Hermon. While Stephen's dad, Bill, did not make it to many football games, as he was quite busy in the fall, he did make it to many lacrosse games, as well as to our annual spring training preseason lacrosse trip in Florida. While in Florida, I had the pleasure of having a few conversations with Bill around fishing, a passion that we both share, but also around coaching philosophies. Bill mentioned to me that his son Stephen had told him about our everybody does his job defensive philosophy. Bill told me that the New England Patriots had a similar saying that predated his arrival in New England as head coach in 2000. Coincidentally or not, it was around 2006, 2007 that Bill started publicly using the do your job saying with his team. Now, I'm not saying Coach Sawyer started the saying and Bill Belichick took it from there, but I am suggesting that son Stephen's experience in the football program and lacrosse programs at Northfield Mount Hermon, which link back to Darryl Sawyer, and conversations that were had with his dad, Bill, might have sparked Bill's more public use of the Patriots mantra, do your job. I believe this mantra could be a direct link back to Coach Darryl Sawyer. So now, everyone here, just like has been the case for me for many years, will remember Darryl Sawyer and his lasting legacy and impact upon others. Every time you see or hear that saying, do your job. Darryl's footprints will certainly be felt in the sands of time for many of us moving forward. Again, congratulations to all the award winners tonight, and congratulations to the Sawyer family. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Oh, thank you very much.
Quite honored. You don't have this.
No.
Thank you.
No.
You want to? This is going to mess up our entertainment tonight because we're going to call up John Dimmick next to introduce two outstanding female athletes, two because neither could be here tonight. One for reasons that go back to 6 months ago and family plans that were made for this weekend, and another who just called a couple of days ago, and much to her chagrin, she and her family could not be here tonight. So, John, would you come up, please? I don't know what you're going to do, Reggie, with the... we got a Jan Carlson and we got a Heather Pancake. Maybe you play them back to back, I guess. John?
Yeah. Good evening. John Dimmick. I'm a former teacher and coach at the high school. Some of you will probably remember my father, Everett Dimmick, who was your principal when you were in junior high school, and that's what brought us, the family, to Brattleboro. Oh, back about 1960. I can see some folks back there. Just to back up for just a second, though, the other reason I probably kind of fortunate to be up there is I'm a St. Michael saint from across town. So,
Hang on, John.
Yeah.
Hang on just a minute. I can't let that go.
Okay.
My apology. This man did not graduate from Brattleboro Union High School. Otherwise, he absolutely and unequivocally would be in the BUHS Athletic Hall of Fame. He is in the University of Vermont's Athletic Hall of Fame. St. Michael's, let's go.
She's gonna give me a fat head. I want to back up just a second, though, to the last recipient, Mr. Sawyer, because we originally, I was born in Bennington, and my father's taught at North Bennington, but he also taught at Ben High. And I was a little guy, this is back in the 50s, and we would go over to pick my dad up at school occasionally, and I was running the halls one day, and I ran into this guy, little guy, but I was a little guy too, and my father says, well, this is our new phys ed teacher. His name is Darrell Sawyer, but we call him Squirrel. Now, when you're a little guy about 5 years old, you never forget anyone named Squirrel. And the other story, which might be a little bit of a myth, and Chris can correct me, but just to show kind of the soft side of Coach Sawyer. During my coaching career, I would frequently stop into the athletic director's office, and when Chris was athletic director, and I stopped in one day, and there was a baseball sitting on the desk, and I noticed it, and the day before I'd been watching a baseball game on TV, and there'd been, I'm not a real baseball fan, but I'd noticed 2 home run balls that seemed to me had gone to exactly the same spot, I think out in right field. So I said to Chris, what's this ball about? And here's the myth part. Chris says, well, the first home run came out, and my dad caught it, and of course everybody's scrambling, and my dad had it, and he gave it to me. Well, this little kid sitting in front of him was kind of upset a little bit, and Darrell, being the kind-hearted was, said, you hang in there, someday you'll get a ball. Don't worry about it. Well, guess where the next ball came? Right to Darrell Sawyer, and guess where that ball went? To that little kid. And Chris can correct you, but even if it's not true, Chris, it's a great story. All right, that brings me to why I'm here, and I'll start with the first person I was asked to introduce, and that would be Jan Carlson. I'm going to introduce 2 female track athletes that were extremely good, but I want you to, I want to also pay credit and due to the women that are here, maybe representing this earlier BUHS Women's Athletic Association, because I was probably one of the first Brattleboro coaches that benefited from Title IX. When I started coaching in 1976, I believe that was the 2nd or 3rd year Title IX, and there'd been one that there was a female coach at the Brattleboro High School coaching the inaugural girls track team. I think she went 1, maybe 2 years, and then I took over for her. So from that point on, Brattleboro female athletes, as Barb would know, have benefited from Title IX. Much more equal time in terms of playing and recognition. And well, you can see if you go back now and you look at some of the history of Brattleboro sports over the last 40 years or so, boy, there's been some pretty spectacular women's sporting teams that I'm sure will be recognized along the way too. And many of whom Darrell coached with. The softball teams have been phenomenal. But to get to Jan, when during my coaching career, I got a phone call from Coach Hummer Holmes one day, one of our more popular coaches back then, and he said, JD, come on up. I got this woman. She's coming up with her daughter. She wants to know if we'd be interested in just showing her daughter how to start in track. So I come up, and we got the starting blocks out, and this little blonde-haired girl comes out with her mom, and we got her in the blocks, and we taught her how to start. Well, this little girl was Jan Carlson. She was a natural from day one. So we waited patiently and for her to come up through the ranks, and she stayed true to Brattleboro and came through the program. Well, Jan is one of the top track and field athletes ever to have competed, not only for Brattleboro, but a good argument could be made that she's one of the best ever to come through the high school programs in the state of Vermont. During her time at Brattleboro, competing both indoors and outdoor, she accumulated 13 individual state track titles. That's a lot of track titles. I can think of another young woman from Proctor that got 11 one time, but 13 individual titles is a lot of track titles. She was also a Stolte Cup recipient and still holds several school records. She also played varsity field hockey under Cheryl Liberdoni. She went on to compete for the University of Vermont track and field teams for 4 years, where she continued to excel in the Division I program. I'll read a few things off from what I received back from them when we applied for this program. This is from the UVM athletic release of the 2010 Rally Awards at the University of Vermont. The Russell O. Sutherland Memorial Trophy was presented for the 71st time at the 2010 Rally Awards. The honor was given to senior male and female student athlete who throughout their college careers has demonstrated a high level of athletic achievement and exemplifies the qualities of character, leadership, and persistence in overcoming obstacles. The 2010 winners of the Russell O. Sunderland Award were Jan Carlson from Vernon, Vermont, and a gentleman named Eric Gilbert from Richmond, Vermont. She received the award because Carlson did not compete during the entire 2007 or 8 season due to stress fractures in her fibula, but she still remains one of the top track and field athletes ever in the UVM program history, in spite of that. She owns 9 school records, has top 10 all-time mark in 6 events. After a 1-year hiatus from the injury, she came back to set 6 new school records in 2008, 2009. And according to this last season, she earned All-American Strength and Conditioning Athlete of the Year honors from her work in the weight room. She broke a 22-year-old school record in the 100 meters at the New England Outdoor Championships. In 2008-2009, she was named to the All-American East All-Conference teams during both indoor and outdoor seasons. She was also picked for the All-New England honors during the outdoor campaign, MVP of both the indoor and outdoor. It goes on and on and on. And the American East Coaches Award went to her, and that award was given to us each year to a student athlete at the league championship who earns the most points. She did that twice in her career. Matt Belfield, who was the head track and field coach at the university, had these few words to say about Jan. He said, Jan was a tremendous leader, more by example with her words, but her actions spoke as much as anyone's actions have ever done at UVM. She'd bring forth to me concerns about teammates that she thought needed help, or if it was being negatively impacted by anyone's choices. Jan was tough. She not only worked hard physically, but she was mentally tough too. At graduation, she held school records in 4 events in indoor track, 4 events in outdoor track. She'd won 2 individual titles for both indoor and outdoor All-American East championships. She'd been named All-American East Conference in 3 seasons in indoor and 4 in all 4 of her outdoor seasons at UVM. She was awarded the Coaches Award, as I mentioned, and she was also a New England collegiate champion in the 200 meters. A pretty phenomenal career in track and field. And what he had to say about her leadership, I think, was pretty important too. Same would have been true here at Brattleboro High School. She was on a very small girls track team at that point, her senior year. But that particular track team went on to place, largely on her efforts, they placed second in the Division I state meet, which is the best any girls track team at Brattleboro has ever done. She won 4 events that day. That brings me to my second athlete that I've been asked to respond to. This young lady, name is Heather Pancake. We actually had a little family joke the other day that Heather was a tremendous athlete. And Bellows Falls had another tremendous athlete at the same time. Her name was Reagan Coffey. They would go head to head in the hurdles, and Heather never quite got it. But the joke was, oh, here comes pancake and coffee, coffee and pancake, and of course the little kids love that. Well, Heather was an outstanding 3-sport athlete at BUHS, lettering in track and field, basketball, and in soccer. She was particularly outstanding in the sport of track and field, winning individual Vermont State champion honors as a junior in the 100-meter hurdles and in the javelin. And as a senior, she won the Vermont State titles in the 100 hurdles, the javelin, and 300 hurdles. She went on to win the New England High School Javelin Championship that year as well. She also won the Vermont State Heptathlon Championship as a senior, and she still holds the BUHS records in the 100 hurdles and the heptathlon. If you've been watching the board at all today, there's one slide that came up with this little short guy with a green UVM hat and this big, she looks like a red-headed Viking woman standing next to him. That was Heather. Heather was a dominant-looking athlete, I can remember that when she would go on the basketball court, the referees would actually make her tie her hair up, because when she'd get whipping her braids around, she would clear the court. You know, it was, I'd like to read a little bit from what Coach Hummer Holmes, Steve Holmes, had to say. He said, during his 18 years he coached the throws at Brattleboro Union High School from 1982 to 2000. Heather Pancake was by far the most outstanding female track athlete that he ever coached. There were other girls who, during the time that he was involved at BUHS, were outstanding as well in Vermont and New England champions in their respective events. What separated Heather from the other outstanding female track and field athletes were her achievements in multi-events. In the spring following the regular season, she competed in the Vermont Heptathlon, as I alluded to, in Bellows Falls, and won that. The heptathlon includes the 100 hurdles, the long jump, the high jump, the 200 meters, the shot put, javelin, and 800 meters. I can remember day one, when that day ended, Reagan Coffey from Bellows Falls, who was a great athlete, also going to make the UVM Hall of Fame, I'm sure, as will, I think, Jan Carlson, was leading by about 20 points in the heptathlon. And I looked at the events come the next day. Says, "This is over. You know, there's no way that Jan Carlson or that Coffee is going to beat Pancake tomorrow." And it was true. That she just dominated the next day. Heather's track and field success at the college levels are feats of legendary proportions, winning the National Division III Heptathlon Championships on multiple occasions. So she was a 3-time national champ. Your multi-event athlete, heptathlon are for females and decathlon for male, especially the ones who win. Heather was a champion in every aspect of her sport. So she went on to a great athletic career at Wheaton College in Illinois, it's a Christian-based school, where she was inducted into the school's Hall of Fame in 2 sports, track and field and basketball. There's probably not a lot of athletes in the world that make it into their collegiate Hall of Fames in 2 different sports. That's a pretty impressive thing to do. She was a Division III National Heptathlon champion in 2000, and in 1999 she was the runner-up as a sophomore. She was a college conference of Illinois and Wisconsin heptathlon champion for all 4 of her seasons at Wheaton, held conference records at 4,000 plus points. She was also the conference champion in the 100-meter hurdles and in the javelin. From a recommendation from Coach John Letterhouse, who was also the coach of the track and field, Heather was exceptionally conscientious track and field athlete, which enabled her to excel in the heptathlon. Needing to work on 7 different disciplines, she was invariably the last athlete to finish workouts each spring, yet never expressed any dismay with the time constraints and cost. She was willingly competed in multiple events at the conference meets outside of the heptathlon specialty and was an encourager of her teammates. Heather was an outstanding player on the Wheaton women's basketball team, where she was all-conference honoree. Heather had 944 career points, 20th in the school history. She was 7th in rebounds and 10th in steals. The basketball coach said Heather was a 4-year starter in the sport of basketball. Her natural competitive and athleticism made her a natural on defense, but she also developed on the offensive side during her 4 years. She finished her 4-year career scoring 944 points, 692 rebounds, and she was recognized all-conference and made all-conference teams several times. They also said that, in that school in particular, they were very impressed with the way she was able to mentor her fellow students, both not only in track, but as I said, it was a Christian-based school, and she did a nice job of being able to blend the sports into what the purpose of their program was. Both outstanding athletes. I'm proud to be up here to announce them both. Coach Freeman was part of this process of getting them both inducted, and with that, I hope they're watching tonight. Thank you, Bill.
I'm going to introduce tonight's, the next inductee, and that's David McGinn. I was a little surprised that David asked me to introduce him, but very proud to be able to do so. Extraordinary athlete in all of the major sports that he participated in. He made himself legendary, and some would believe he pitched every inning of the 1978 state championship baseball run by the Brattleboro Colonels, all 4 games, but Jeff Curlow got a couple of innings in there, but Dave pitched most of it. But I don't really want to talk necessarily about his earned run average or how well he hit or how many points he scored in basketball. David is an extraordinary human being, well respected throughout the state of Vermont. And thinking back, there are a couple of incidents that indicated that someday Dave was going to be a great coach and now a great administrator at St. Johnsbury Academy, the Hilltoppers. We'll be hearing from a Hilltopper a little bit later, too. Art Freeman's varsity basketball team had made the tournament, and that was back in the days when you had to win a percentage of your games. Today, every team in the state of Vermont qualifies for the tournament. You may have won 0 games out of 20 and qualified. In this particular year, Art's team had qualified, but it was down. Art and I were trying to figure it, maybe the number 8 seed in the tournament. We had to go to BFA of St. Albans, and they were an incredible ball club that year. They won 19 games and lost 1. So here comes Brattleboro up to St. Albans, diagonally across the state as far as you can go without entering into Canada. And also in those days, Art would drive the bus on the way to the game, and then I would drive the bus on the way home. And being a long trip, Dave McGinn comes to Art Freeman and says, look, I've got a relative at a senior living home. Why don't we stop there? It worked like a charm. It got all the kids. I don't know if this was your objective, Dave, or not. It probably partially was anyway. Maybe totally was. But we went in there, and everybody's mind was taken off the game. The team played very loose, and Brattleboro Union, seeded 8th or below, beat the number 1 seed BFA St. Albans 19-1. That was in basketball. And again, in baseball, we know what he did, what a fine player he was. I have to tell this story. I apologize to you. I've told it many times on the radio, David, and I'm going to tell it again because most of the people here haven't heard it. Dave always wanted to have his teams play above themselves in the preseason. And he was the coach at Thetford Academy, Division III, I do believe. And he would contact Coach Tenney. Carl Tenney was the coach here then, right, Dave? I think so. And so he brought his Thetford Academy down here, team, and they started the scrimmage, which was really just a preseason game. And Thetford was getting killed. Brattleboro was hitting rockets everywhere, and Thetford couldn't handle really the Brattleboro pitching. And so Dave, graciously and physically fit enough, in his 40s, goes to Coach Tenney and he said, look, you're not getting much out of this. This isn't really fair to your kids. How about if I go out and pitch? In his 40s. How about if I go out and pitch for Thetford and we'll continue the scrimmage in that way? I can't remember anybody hitting a foul ball off David McGinn. He was that good. He was that good. Finally, I've got one thing I've never publicly talked about. My wife knows about this. My team, if they remember it, knows about this. David was coaching Little League. At the same time I was coaching Little League. I assume you had a son coming through. I had a son coming through, and we were playing in Windsor, I think it was. And we scored a run on a pass ball, and the runner coming from third to home happened to be my son. He slid into home plate. He was safe. And all of a sudden, we took the lead, by the way, at that point. All of a sudden, here comes the umpire with Dave. Dave was in his ear, and the umpire comes over and says, the runner is out at home. I said, wait a minute, you just said he was safe. He was out. He slid, and this is a Little League rule, you cannot slide in face first. My son's over here beside me with his uniform totally soiled. I called my son over and said, Mr. Umpire, this is the guy who just scored the run. The front of his uniform is not soiled. Look, we would actually teach the kids not to slide that way. And the ump said, no, he's still out. He wouldn't swallow his pride there a little bit. I always wondered, Dave, and if you want to answer it today, you can. If not, if that umpire wasn't in Dave McGinn's pocket. Dave, congratulations. Come on up here. That next to the last photograph was me as an assistant football coach, coaching Dave. He was the quarterback football team. A lot of people forget that. We were over at Mount Anthony in Bennington, last game of the regular season. We needed a win to get in the playoffs. We were down to one play left. And I'm pointing at Dave. Dave, look for this, look for this. It was kind of a good moment there.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to start a little off script, given the introduction and the fabricated story that was finished at the end. It probably is true. I probably did have the umpire in my pocket, but I've never twisted the rules. If his son slid appropriately, I believe, Coach, I can't change the call at this time, so we'll have to let that stand. I also wanted to note, in case you saw me pull out 4 sheets, in years past, if I had 4 pages for a speech, people would rush to the exit, and I wouldn't blame you. The last thing, in speaking with Grady, who's someone I quite frankly idolized growing up in the neighborhood on Cedar Street, and having walked in with Chris Sawyer when he arrived, Chris and I hadn't gotten to the door from our cars when he mentioned many of the neighborhood contests that we would have and the pride that we took in the area, the neighborhoods we grew up in as we would cross over to play. So Grady and I would like to just share in saying Grady was the street down below me, the Sawyers were in the block right behind my house. Dana grew up in that neighborhood. Paul and Joey Shield were just up the road. Just saying. So with that, I do want to say thank you, Coach Holliday, for your kind words and your introduction. And I'd like you to allow me to join the chorus congratulating this inaugural class of the BHS Hall of Fame. Being selected at any time is an honor, but to be included in the first group while knowing many colonels before me and after me makes this even more humbling. I want to say thank you to the committee for all the work and commitment I know it takes to bring something so special as this celebration together. I hope your pleasure in the evening comes from our appreciation of all that you have done to bring us here, especially in the face of COVID. I do have a special thanks to Coach Holliday and to my neighbor, friend, classmate, and teammate, Dana Sprague. One of the things that makes a community special are people like you who have given so much directly to the community and in this case, our high school. Your efforts on a daily basis continue to make Brattleboro a better place. I've been very fortunate to have guardian angels at all stages of my life. The greatest of those is my loving wife of 41 years, Marcy. Through these past 4 decades, we've resided in Bradford, Thetford, and Danville, Vermont, while raising our 2 sons, Damon and Trevor. They are now both married, and each has blessed us with a grandchild. They are my world and represent the most important work Marcy and I will ever do. But in 1984, I began teaching and coaching at the collegiate level in North Carolina and Georgia. After returning to Vermont, I have been privileged to have hundreds of families trust me working with their children at 3 different high schools, using the skills and the compassion that I first experienced here at BUHS. I actually retired a year ago, but have found my way back to working with young people through sport in the Northeast Kingdom because it feeds my soul. I've had a very happy life filled with the gifts of love, family, and community. I feel blessed that all my sibs have joined Marcy and I this evening, along with my sister Ginny, who is here in spirit. We are all proud alums. Brattleboro Union High School will always hold a special place in my heart. My high school experience was the best of times and at times the worst of times. Some of you know my parents separated just before the start of my freshman year. My family looked out for me, but I was confused and angry. Beginning with Ralph Momini, my freshman football coach, and all my coaches to follow, Coach McDonald, Holiday, North, Tenney, Sawyer, and yes, Coach Freeman. Along with my friends, teachers, this school, and this community, they kept me pointed in the right direction. So tonight, I truly appreciate the opportunity to say thank you to the Colonel family and the Brattleboro community. It's because of you I have truly had a life with no regrets. And I promise you that all that I have given in my work with young students and athletes has been out of a commitment to pay it forward for all that was done for me here in my hometown. So with that, I thank you again for this honor, and may you all be well.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming. Ernie Johnson, Brattleboro's most successful baseball player ever. Ernie Johnson was born in Brattleboro in 1924, graduated from Brattleboro High School in 1942, and was a major league pitcher whose career spanned the entire decade of the 1950s. Ernie retired with a lifetime record of 40-23 and an ERA of 3.77 in a total of 273 games. Ernie's even greater fame, however, came as a television broadcaster for the Atlanta Braves. A couple of weeks before Ernie passed away in 2011, I had a chance to talk to him. He wanted to make it clear that he was very grateful for the life he had. He knew how lucky he was to have lived the life he had lived. To be a kid growing up in Brattleboro, Vermont, and having the chance to play Major League Baseball was a dream come true. We would get together each year when Ernie was home for alumni weekend. We would visit at my house and look at any new memorabilia I had purchased. And then we'd go to the Sportsman's Lounge for lunch and a beer. He liked to say that I knew stuff about him that even he didn't know. Ernie never let his fame go to his head. He never forgot his roots. Ernie always stayed humble and always sent thank you notes. He returned every autograph request he received right up until the end of his life. Every time we talked, Ernie wanted to know what was going on in Brattleboro and still considered Brattleboro his hometown. How many people can say that they had the President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, a billionaire, Ted Turner, and maybe the greatest baseball player who ever lived, Hank Aaron, at their retirement party? It never changed Ernie Johnson. He was humble and proud to the end, and I was proud to call Ernie my friend. Thank you.
I met with one of my relatives, Eddie Holliday, 25-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, fairly recently after not seeing him in a long time. And he told a story about Ernie Johnson. In those days, the Brattleboro Little League would do something special for all of the teams. And in this particular year, the entirety of the Brattleboro Little League went to Boston to see the Boston Braves play baseball, where Ernie Johnson was at the time. And Ernie came out with a couple of people with him with bags of baseballs, brand new baseballs. And according to Eddie, Ernie Johnson stood there for a long time, reaching into the bag and tossing baseballs into the bleachers where the Brattleboro Little Leaguers were seated until every one of them had a baseball. All right, Dana's going to invite, Dana.
So a year ago when this was supposed to happen, Ernie's wife and kids and grandkids were all going to come up, but things changed, and Lois is 93 years old, and they decided it was too dangerous to fly up here with the COVID. But we're lucky to have a relative, Ginny Milkey, who's the niece of Ernie Johnson, still lives in Brattleboro, and she's here, and she's going to accept Ernie's plaque.
Second time that one broke tonight. I'm absolutely thrilled to be accepting this award on behalf of the Johnson family, my Aunt Lois and my cousins, Don, Chris, and Ernie Jr., and all of the grandkids, of which there are several. I think Dana covered it, that Ernie was down to earth and humble, despite all of the fame that he attained in his life. And he was a great storyteller. And one of my favorite stories was that when Ernie decided he wanted to make a career of baseball, his mother, my grandmother, who had a very hard life growing up in Sweden, said to him, "Oh, don't you think you ought to get a good job down at the Dunham factory?" Now, that would have been a respectable job, but it just wasn't his calling. My favorite memory was in third grade. Now, at that point, Uncle Ernie had been traded to the Orioles. And growing up, of course, we rooted for the Red Sox and the Braves. So my dad took my older sister and me down to Boston to see the Orioles play the Red Sox. And of course, that was the exception to my rooting for the Red Sox. And Uncle Ernie came in the 7th inning as a relief pitcher and won the game. And we were pretty pleased with that. And the last thing I want to share is that he was very generous. And when he was broadcasting and the Braves played the Montreal Expos, he would always get tickets once during the summer for my parents and my dad's cousins up in Montreal. And they would get to sit down in the first few rows there with the players' wives, who apparently looked at them and wondered who these strangers were. And I got to go to a game with my Aunt Lois in Atlanta one time when I visited there. We were sitting down in the second row, and Ernie was up there broadcasting, and Lois looked at me and she said, "Get your pocketbook ready." I'm like, "What?" There was no net in front of us. And she said, "If the baseball comes this way, just bring it up." Thank you.
We're going to bring the Big Daddy up here again, as he will talk about a man who probably had as much influence on his life as anybody, maybe more, Coach Andy Natowich.
You're right about that, Wade. Yeah, he's right about that. Again, thanks for allowing me to be here, and thank you, Dana, for the opportunity. No stats here, no records. You can read about that in the book. This is about the man, our coach. When I became aware that the first Athletic Hall of Fame here was being established, my first thought was Andy Natowich, and he should be at the forefront of the inductees. That said, I got to express my own personal thoughts to the committee for your insight. The term coach and Andy Natowich are synonymous. No one else that I know came to mind if you said coach, or comes to mind. He was larger than life to those who came under his tutelage. His demeanor was not to be questioned, at least if you were one of his athletes. To say he was tough would be an understatement. Because his intentions were not always clear to young 14 and 18-year-old kids, you walked away certain times just shaking your head, not understanding what was going on. But ever so slowly, you began to understand that the objectives behind his behavior was to instill admirable qualities of character and the values to be learned through sport in every one of us. For many of us, these methods only became clear after we finished our playing days and we left the school. It became very clear at that time. His mode of operation, or method of operandi, however you want to say it, may have been this. He might not have been sure of what level of athletic success he could bring out in you or develop in you. But he knew you would become a better athlete if you paid attention. And more importantly, he was sure you'd be a better person. His approach to coaching was strictly authoritarian. What he said went, and that was it, no questions asked. His expectation was that if you performed the skills the way that he taught them to you, your chances of success were better than not. His teaching and coaching was not for just the moment, but it was for a lifetime of adherence. Andy was difficult to please. At least that's what we all believed, for his praise was minimal. His standard of excellence was not easily accomplished, and gaining his total satisfaction may never have happened, because he knew that you had to get better, no matter how good you were. I'll just tell one story, and I'll try to be quick. We went to Monadnock to play a baseball game. In New Hampshire, they play 9 innings. In Vermont, we play 7. Andy wanted a 7-inning game. And he kept at the coach, let's make this 7. No, we're playing 9. Hey, let's make this 7. No, we're playing 9. That's going to be, Suns are going to be in ours. We can't play. Let's play 7. No, coach, we're playing 9. So Andy goes back to the dugout or the bench, and the game goes on, and we go on, and it gets to be the 5th inning or 6th inning, and I'm on deck. He says, Richard, get over it. Look, when you get up to plate, take the first pitch. Then step out of the batter's box. Call a timeout. And tell the umpire you're having a hard time seeing the ball. Because the sun's in your eyes, right? I go, no, it's not bothering me. Did you hear what I said? The sun's bothering you. Okay, I got it. Get in there, strike 1. Oh, this is awful. This is getting hard to see out there. He says, you know what? It's going to get a lot harder if you don't get back in the box and hit now. Okay. Next pitch, what do? I hit it out of the park for a home run. As I crossed home plate, the umpire goes, I hope you see that poorly every time you come to bat. And then I had to go see Andy. He's just standing there going, geez, I didn't tell you that a home run. I told you to have a hard time up there. Go sit down. Thanks a lot. Hit a home run. You can't please him. His praise was sparse, but encouragement to those people that needed it was always there, and it was acceptable, and you were pleased about it. Andy's greatest attribute as a coach was he could take whatever talent he saw and find a way where you could contribute, put you in a place where you could be successful. If all you could do was snap the ball, then you snapped the ball. If all you could do was be short up there and work the pitcher for a walk, that's what you did. He found a place where you could contribute to the team. His guiding principles were simple. You must know your role and your responsibilities. You need to work hard all the time, and you carry out what I expect you to do. And you play with the dignity of the game. No nonsense, no gamesmanship, no goofing around. That's what it was. Leadership can be defined by the amount of influence that you have over those that follow. To say he had influence over everyone that played for him is, again, a misunderstanding, or just, it's so far from the truth. You had to do what he wanted you to do. Andy's influence in our community enhanced the strength of this town. He was a cornerstone of the foundation that Brattleboro was built upon. His tough and often harsh exterior very successfully hid his caring and compassionate character, often felt in the one-on-one situation. And ultimately, to all of us, as we grew further and further away from his daily teachings and coachings. There's an author, John Grisham, who expressed Andy's true character in a book called The Bleachers that he wrote. And I said this once before. Coaches are few and far between who can so motivate their athletes that they spend the rest of their life trying to make sure that they'd never disappoint him. That was Andy Natowich. And we were all simply Andy's boys who became men. So if you would, I'd like you to join me and his son Phil in inducting Andy Natowich into the inaugural 2021 class, Brattleboro Union High School Hall of Fame. Please join me, Phil.
Well done.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Now you have a picture. Keep that right there.
Thank you, Richard. This is the 4th Hall of Fame induction that I've had the pleasure of attending for my dad. The 2 bookends were his inaugural high school and now BUHS. And it's I think it's really fitting that this closes the book on Andy's Hall of Fames. He told me many times that it was in 5th grade that he decided what his life career would be. He didn't want to be a professional athlete, which he was. He didn't want to necessarily be one of the 10 greatest high school athletes in Connecticut, which he nearly 100 years later, he still is recognized as, and the only one pre-World War II. But he enjoyed the playing, but what he always wanted to be after 5th grade, he told me the teacher's name, but I forget her name. But after having her for a 5th grade teacher, he decided he wanted to be a teacher and a coach. And so he left professional athletics. He had a cup of coffee with the Washington football team. But he was offered a job in Paradise, and it was his dream job, so he came to Vermont. And he never regretted a day of it. Thank you.
Our next introducer is going to come to us as a friend, really, of Barb Ferradoni, the wife of Peter Ferradoni, who the Burlington Free Press, after seeing him play, called Brattleboro's greatest athlete. And that's Tom Costello. Don't take this the wrong way that he's a friend of the wife. Peter's been dead many years, and Barb works here after many, many years at the Sportsman's Lounge. And Tom is here at the Legion often and has been the commander. Tom?
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you.
Very much, Billy. Thank you. Thank you for doing this for all of us. Billy, in a way, you know, as his want, is not completely wrong. I came to Brattleboro in 1980, having suffered and occasionally had been benefited from association with Brattleboro as my school in Rutland, MSJ. And I was a young, you know, as many of you know, lawyer without much experience, and had an opportunity to go to Southeast Asia for a year and be with some great Marines and learn some elemental things, and came down here to try some cases, and some of those cases were challenging, as some of you will remember. And we learned that there were a number of courts in town. There was a Newfane, where they had the judge and the side judge out there, the Superior Court. And then there was the District Court down here, which had more of the criminal cases. And then there was a third court down on Canal Street. And the presiding judge in that court was Peter Ferradoni. And the side judge was Barbara. And the other side judge was Danny Russo. And there was so much justice and understanding and love and concern there from those three judges. And they took this little boy in and enabled me to do so many things I've been so fortunate to do. I treasured, Barbara, that relationship with the three of you, and to go in there and Peter sitting on the bench, as it were, talking about his playing against Poochie Levens back in 1951, and so many other wonderful experiences from this truly extraordinary individual. He could rightly be said to be a greatest athlete to come through our school, and no one would really seriously contest that. He was a Hercules. There's no other way to look at it. He was a quarterback on the football team. beginning as a sophomore. He played in the basketball team, and he scored during his freshman year and led the SVL in scoring in his sophomore year and had a tremendous, tremendous career. In baseball, he had an opportunity to play the SVL finals against the other school, Rutland High School in Rutland, in June 5th, 1951. Correct me, Mr. Tatra, if I trespass from the truth a little bit here, but be a little patient with me, Kenny. And in that game, he won it 7-0, and he struck out 18 batters. Now, 3 days later, he went to Barry and played Spalding in the finals, and he only struck out 12, and he won that one 6-1. It was just a feat which is just hard to comprehend with us here. As a basketball player, he was, and I could see him there sitting on the bench. What a talented individual. You could see the balance. You could see the flair. And in 1951, they selected 28 players across the country to play a North-South game. One person was selected from New England. It was Peter Ferradoni. He played 18 minutes in that game. The North won. He got 17 points. He was the star of that team. There's no other way, I think, to describe Peter as an athlete or as a man, but as a Hercules. He took every bit of talent he had, and he had a lot, and he devoted it to the achievement of excellence. And beyond that, when he was through, he joined the army during the Korean conflict, and then he came home and found the love of his life, Barbara, married and started the Sportsman's Lounge, and later had Peter, who's with us also tonight. And over those years since that time, he's been a true great asset for Brattleboro. It is an honor, an extraordinary honor for me to have known him. It's an extraordinary honor for me to be speaking of him. And in a way, I'm just a substitute, you know. The real main character is Kenny Tatro. Is Kenny left? It's pretty late here. Is Kenny still here? Kenny Tatro still here? So Kenny was the second sacker on the 1949 team. And Kenny led the team in hitting. I guess he was tied with Ernie Gibson. But Peter was on that team, of course. He was only a sophomore. And Kenny asked me, he said, I'd like to give up a speech there, but I've got a lot of responsibilities up to the little conclave we live up there in the hill. And Marie's got a lot of chores for me. And then I've got my bocce team that I have to be devoted to. So I've tried, Kenny, to tell the story of this magnificent human being, which is a credit to Brattleboro and a credit to us all. Barbara, would you come up? And Peter, would you come up to receive this honor, please? I want you both to come up, please. Thank you, Bill.
One of the more devastating days in a young kid's life for me occurred in junior high school, as John Dimmick said correctly, where his dad was the principal. We were walking through the hallway, and an announcement came forward, and kids, boys and girls, began to discuss the news that they had heard. Devastating news, incredible news, unfathomable news. and the girls were crying. One of the great football players in Brattleboro Colonel history had died on the way to school in a motorcycle accident. It's hard for me to talk about it right now, but Alan Smith, Ray Smith's brother, has agreed to talk about a fabulous football player, person, and a state champion in sprints in his sophomore year. He is believed to be, and maybe somebody can correct this, Chris Sawyer, the only football athlete in Vermont history to be named All-State for 3 consecutive years, his sophomore, junior, and senior years. Please welcome Alan Smith.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to everybody that put this together and are honoring my brother today. We grew up in the town of Vernon. There was my little brother and myself and Ray and my sister Kathy. We grew up on a farm in Vernon, and it weren't the Vernon that you see today. It was the Vernon before the atomic plant came in and was kind of a hick town. But we liked our little hick town, and we thought that when growing up in Vernon, you know, it seemed like most of us lived on a farm or worked on a farm, one place or another. And we kind of grew up fast on the farm. We all learned a strong work ethic growing up in Vernon. And as we got older, came up to Brattleboro to go to junior high and everything. My brothers really excelled. When we were in Vernon, we'd play. We actually learned how to work, but then we started to learn about football. And my brother really excelled in football, as you know. And we'd come home and we'd watch on Sunday afternoon, we'd watch the New York Giants on TV, and come halftime, we'd run out and play football together for a while. And of course, I was 6 grades younger than my brother Ray, and my younger brother was a couple grades younger than I was. And me and my younger brother really looked up to Ray at how fast he was. He was wicked fast. Everybody that played with him knows that. But we had so when he started playing football in his sophomore year, or even his freshman year, he became quite popular. And one of the things I noticed about my brother was that he never looked down on anybody. He always tried to build people up. And no matter where he was at in doing something, he always tried to bring them along with him somehow and build them up. And that kind of character that he had was really rubbed off on me. And my mother was a big influence on that type of thing too. And I just feel very fortunate to have grown up with such a good brother as Ray was. And I just tell you about a few of the highlights in a couple of the games that I remember watching. So one day, I think he was in his sophomore or junior year. He comes in the house after school or practice, and they had a game on Saturday, of course, and he comes in and he drops his football cleats down on the floor. I remember being on the floor, and he said, you clean these, polish these up, and you spit shine them so that they shine like crazy, and I'll make a touchdown for you in the second half. He had his first half devoted to someone else, but I would get the second half touchdown. And I remember it was up in Bennington Catholic. They were playing, and dry year that year. It was the field didn't have much of any grass in it. It was all dirt, dust. It was dust. And anyways, come the second half, he ran a long touchdown, and I just thought that was one of the biggest things that I remember with him. And there was another game that I remember. It was a game up in Hartford, Vermont. I didn't think we played Hartford, but I think it was Hartford. And I don't even remember if we won or lost that game, but I remember Ray was, he never seemed to be afraid of anybody. And he was small. And I remember him running off the right tackle there. I was right into the games. I was as close as I could get, and I was one of them that ran up and down the sidelines, to watch different plays. And anyways, he got in the open, and I thought, oh, he's got a touchdown. There's just one guy down there to beat. And it was a big guy. And I thought, where did this guy come from? I mean, I thought, he can get by him. There's nobody in the middle of the field. There's just this one guy down along the sidelines. And I know, how shifty he was. Those of you that played with him, he could change directions so fast that you don't even know where he was. Anyways, he was running right toward this guy. He was maybe a few yards away from the sideline. And instead of going around shifting and going around the guy, he took him right on. He wanted to knock him on his ass. But the guy actually knocked him on his ass. And I remember Coach Nadowich saying, why didn't you go around him? He looked like he was twice the size. He looked like a lineman. I don't know how he got down there, but anyways, it was one of them, just a couple of them things that I wanted to share with you anyways. And I just want to thank everybody for being here and for honoring my brother, Ray.
Next on the docket is Joe Shield, and Joe asked me if I would speak on his behalf, introduce him. The statistics that Joe brings to this banquet are incredible. He was the quarterback of the Brattleboro Union High School football team, a team which was very run-oriented. Joe was a great thrower, a lot like Phil Nadowich here, in that Phil probably could have thrown the ball 25 or 30 times a ball game and had great statistics. Joe could have done the same, but at BUHS in those days, we ran the ball predominantly. Joe led the Colonels to the 1978 championship game. Colonels were defeated in overtime. Joe was good enough quarterback to be selected and play in the Shrine game for Vermont back in the days when it was the very best 33 players from New Hampshire against Vermont. And he led the Vermont team to a rare victory as the quarterback of the Vermont team. Joe was a great baseball player, and I have that from Alan Liberdoni, one of the most knowledgeable baseball people in this area, and in any area for that matter. Joe left BUHS, went to the Worcester Academy with a wide open offense, began to throw the ball, attracted attention, entered Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and was on the sideline, much as I was back in high school at the Rutland game, probably not expecting to play. There was an upperclassman who was the quarterback at Trinity, a good guy, according to Joe, a good quarterback. And on the first play of the ball game, he had an equipment malfunction. He went over to the sideline to get his equipment fixed, and the coach put Joe in the ball game. Joe never came out for 4 years and held every offensive category record in Trinity history. A couple of years ago, I went down to Trinity to see Joe inducted on the same night into the Trinity College Football Hall of Fame and Baseball Hall of Fame on the same night. He's an extraordinary guy, tremendously well-spoken, from a magnificent, time-honored Brattleboro family. And what I remember most about Joe, he went on and played. He was drafted by the Green Bay Packers, which isn't what I remember most, but I forgot to mention that. And played in the NFL. I remember watching him on television in an exhibition game, and he moved the Packers down the field very quickly against the Dallas Cowboys, who at the time were America's team. I don't know whose team they are now. Jerry Jones' team, I guess. But what impresses me most about Joe Shield is his character, his professionalism, the way he carries himself. This town could not have a better ambassador anywhere. Joe happens to be in Connecticut than Joe Shield. Joe?
I want to thank you for that introduction, Bill. Greatly appreciated. And to all the organizers and committee members, I am deeply grateful. Additionally, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I also want to congratulate all the other inductees for their very distinguished athletic careers. It's an honor to be here and to share this evening with all of you. It is always very meaningful for me to be back in Brattleboro. It literally does feel just like yesterday when I grew up here. I vividly remember the tradition, the athletic excellence, and the role athletics played in creating community and fostering relationships. And certainly the tremendous support I received from my parents, Paul and Elaine, my siblings, my extended family, including my aunts and uncles, my cousins, and of course, my teammates and friends. I love this town when I grew up here, and I love coming back to visit. And as a proud native of Southern Vermont and a graduate of BUHS, I feel fortunate to have been able to take the lessons learned here and apply them ongoing. And what was not so apparent at the time, which is obvious now, is how my overall experience here not only inspired me, but helped prepare me for life. As I reflect on my overall experiences, I will start with early childhood. Growing up on Laurel Street, in a much younger, formative years, Laurel Street, as you know, was in the shadow of the Harris Hill ski jump. And the people in that neighborhood, as Dave had mentioned earlier, immediate vicinity were some that I truly looked up to. Up the road a little further was Grady Venue. Around the corner on Cedar Street was Dave McGinn. Those two were a few years older, but they were larger than life, both literally and figuratively. And around the corner on the other side, on Spruce Street, was the tremendous Galanis family. Older brother Jim and his training partners were Winter Olympic endurance athletes. But in the summer, Southern Vermont was a training ground. On our roads, you could witness firsthand the intensity of their training and preparation. And the impression all of this had on me within 2 blocks of the neighborhood as a young, impressionable kid. What I had exposure to and what I looked up to was very, very inspirational. Now, as the Shield family continued to grow, with the 5th and 6th child arriving, our home on Laurel Street was bursting at the seams. And we moved to a place with a little more room, to a home on Green Hill Parkway, up off Western Avenue. You know, that neighborhood was where the classic sandlot leagues began to form. Not only with my siblings, but with neighbors, friends and neighbors like Buddy Lolott, Jamie Gillespie, Brian and Brad Fenn, the Patnode family. And Hunter's Field, as we called it, was owned by the Hunter family, which was adjacent to our street, where we all played all types of sports on a daily basis, rain or shine or snow, 365 days a year, and not just for a season or two, but for the better part of a decade. If you drive by there today, I think you still see the base paths and the trampled down bases, home plate, pitcher's mound, and the outline of the football field. We all certainly owe a debt of gratitude to the Hunter family for the use of their lawn for a decade. And in the winter, when we weren't playing football in the snow, we were skiing and ski racing at Hogback Mountain in Marlboro. What great memories. What formative years to experience when in your neighborhood you had the examples of Grady Venue, Dave McGinn, Galanis family. Then you move to a neighborhood where you develop wide-ranging athletic skills across all sports every day, sandlot style, in your middle school years. Then it was to high school. High school may have looked daunting at first, but then you got to appreciate the experiences, the coaching, and the molding. This was no longer neighborhood sandlot games. Coaches Darrell Sawyer, Carl Tenney, Bill Holliday, Art Freeman, and the list goes on. And certainly the continued presence at the high school of Andy Natowich and the beginning presence of Al Liberdoni at that time, and what was stressed. High school was a time of learning and growth. And these were coaches and people that were fully invested in our success. They were coaches on the field where they taught us to play smart, to be tough, to have resolve, and to play hard. But more importantly, they were life coaches. And although it was important to win, it was the way we prepared and played the game and handled adversity that was most important to the coaches. It was the character of the team. The makeup of our teams were molded through reinforcement of hard work, resolve, setting lofty goals, team first, perseverance, know how to handle adversity, and stay together as a team. And as you know, football and baseball are the ultimate team sports. There are many integral parts, and my teammates made it possible for me to succeed. We played hard for each other, played hard for the team. There are way too many to name, but I'd be nothing without them. So thank you to all. And no matter the score, no matter the team record at the end of the season, one thing that was always consistent is how teams prepared and how they conducted themselves. And I believe that is an underlying and shared experience for anyone here tonight. We were all fortunate to be part of such a strong value system at BUHS. Our coaches were also teachers, so education was important. Community was stressed, and athletic excellence was strived for always. The core values that have always been inherent at BUHS, making daily habits of respect, honor, community, personal growth, and challenge. Those were pillars or foundations for anything we hope to accomplish. And we were all fortunate to be a part of this and to draw on the experiences our entire lives. So thank you again. I'm very honored, and I want to thank you again for this evening.
Debonair.
Thank you.
Here you are. Take care. Thank you. I only became acquainted over the last couple of weeks with the next gentleman who will introduce Grady Vigneault, and that's Tom Levitt. I've texted with him, emailed with him, and had one telephone conversation with him, but he has duly impressed me. Tom Levitt.
Graydon E. Vigneault Jr. is a Vermont treasure. His reach extends well beyond Vermont and here in Brattleboro. But here at home, he was a Brattleboro colonel anchoring the line on the football team. He was a physical presence on the basketball court, and he held down first base for the high school and Legion baseball teams. He was also a leader on the winning Vermont Maple Sugar Bowl team, the Shrine team, that occurred in a game that was labeled the greatest of them all. And then on to make his mark at the University of New Hampshire. Grady earned first team All-American offensive tackle and all-academic team honors, captaining the Wildcats. He was on UMass head coach Dick McPherson's all-competitor team. He started 3 years, beating the University of Vermont in Burlington in his first start and playing a big part in UNH's first ever NCAA playoff victory the next year. Upon graduation, Grady worked a year on Rick Taylor's Boston University coaching staff and then returned to UNH to serve on the coaching staff of Bill Bowes, recruiting and developing some of the top Division I AA talent in the nation over 7 years. He was elected to the UNH Hall of Fame. Pivoting from coaching, Grady took his towering curiosity and business instincts to Columbia University and earned an MBA before going to work at Bain & Company, then also employing a guy named Mitt Romney. Always the Green Mountain boy at heart, Grady bade farewell to the corporate world and came home with his wife Mary to start a number of businesses from their base in Stowe. To this day, they still own and operate the Round Hearth on the Mountain Road. Over the years, they built up the Vermont All-Star Sports Camps and Crafts programs. When Grady began the All-Star football camps in the 80s, there were 6 college players active from the 35 Vermont high school football programs. 2 decades later, there were 140 active college players from 28 Vermont high school football programs. Grady and the outstanding Vermont high school and regional college coaches that he attracted to the camp gave hundreds of young men a real foundation in the game that allowed many to compete at a high level. Grady took his compelling brand of leadership to the post of headmaster at Bridgeton Academy in Maine for 9 years. He built anew the campus assets and instilled Vigneault's rules of character development. He shaped students that came for a postgraduate preparatory year of growth to ready themselves for some of the top collegiate, academic, and athletic programs around the Northeast and other frontiers. He walked the talk. Now Grady is president and CEO of Franklin County's Y, just down the road from here in Greenfield. Never tiring, he is again bringing transformational vitality to a vital organization and community resource serving a diverse constituency. Okay, enough on the resume. I didn't have to look it up. I have followed it with admiration for 45 years. Grady is the reason I chose UNH. He was my host when I was recruited. Other than his intimidating size at the time, and his bushy head of hair and Fu Manchu, he was anything but the archetype football Hulk. He was a preschool education major with a humble demeanor and unmistakable affection for a co-ed named Meredith in the dorm next door. That combination made a big impression on a 17-year-old kid from Burlington High School. Fast forward to that same kid as a 21-year-old starting quarterback for the Wildcats, with Grady still in the role of big brother as a coach. When the promising start to the season piled up into a battle of personnel attrition and some tough second half losses, it was Grady that served the lessons of how to deliver hard news with a caring hand. I have been applying those lessons ever since. As I bring my dear friend and hero up here in a second, I have to say what a joy it has been for Diane and me to share all of life's many ups and a few downs with Grady and Mary. They have 4 incredible human beings they brought into the world and have made everything they have touched better. Ladies and gentlemen, Brattleboro's own Grady Vigneault.
Thank you, Tom. I think I want that guy's autograph, whoever the hell you were talking about. Must have been my brother. Anyway, I've on a very strict pitch count. I know it's late in the evening. My wife, Mary, has said, don't blow it. But coming out of the bullpen, you need to warm up, right? So I'm already going to go off script. This has been an unbelievable evening. What Big Daddy talked about is making memories. I already made a bunch of them tonight. But my experience actually started about 12 o'clock this afternoon when I get a text message from Billy Holiday saying, Grady, if you're available, Chris Sawyer would like to have you come and hand out the Elwell Trophy to the winner of the BUHS Mount Anthony football game that's being played at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I was at work, ran home, I was going to go for a bike ride. I said, you know what, I'm going to go up there and do that. Showed up, Chris got me squared away, and at the end of the game, I was able to go out and unfortunately hand the award to Mount Anthony, but it was really neat to be able to do that. As I did it, the kids from Mount Anthony were obviously excited, but they were so respectful, so appreciative. And as I handed the trophy off, which weighed about 70 pounds, I swear. But anyway, I got it off my hands, and 3 of the coaches from Mount Anthony came up and said, hey, Grady, I just want you to know that I went to your football camps when I was in high school. Not one of them, not 2, but 3 of them. So it was just, again, it was nice to make those connections and to know that what we strive to do during our career, during our life, actually makes a difference. So then after the game, I had about a half hour before the social hour, so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see my dad. And so I drove over to St. Michael's Cemetery, and drove up in front of my dad's grave, got out of the car and said, Dad, I'm going to read you this speech, because I was still nervous. I wasn't going to get it right. And I said, I'm going to read it to you. And if you think it stinks, you got 30 minutes to get back to me before I walk into this place. But it was just, it just capped off my afternoon and really kind of set the stage for coming in here tonight. And so I've warmed up. Let me give you what I had actually written. Number one, thank you, Tom. Your words are great, but your remarkable friendship is even more priceless. God bless you, man. Members of the selection committee, thank you. Thank you, BUHS, and thank you, Brattleboro. To my brother and sister inductees, congratulations. I am humbled to be part of your very accomplished club. To my family, you are awesome, especially at 9:30 at night after getting here at 5. So God bless you. I love you all. And Mom, you've always been my hero. And I'll tell you again, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. Love you, Mom. I originally learned of the Hall of Fame in the spring of 2020 when Big Daddy, you're going to call you that forever now, when Big Daddy asked me to submit a letter of support for the 1965 Colonels football team. Easy to do and a pleasure since that team and those players had also been my heroes during my grade school days. Phil Nadowitz, the Robinson brothers, Dwayne Holmquist, Rob Farnham, and so many more. Man, those guys are awesome, and I dreamed of following in their footsteps. Writing that reference was a lovely stroll down memory lane. Anyway, about 2 months later, I get a phone call from Dana Sprague on the committee, and I'm like, Dana, did the 65 team make it? And he goes, yeah, actually, Grady, they did, but that's not why I'm calling. I'm like, what's he calling me for? And he goes, I'm calling to share that you also made the Hall of Fame. And I tell you, in that moment, I was filled with an array of unexpected emotions. And quite frankly, as hard as this may be to believe, Tom and Diane and Mary, I was rendered speechless. In that moment, I realized that every blessing I have enjoyed has had its foundation right here in this community. In a flash, Dana's call imprinted upon me the revelation that this community, my mom and dad, the tales my dad shared about his own heroes like Ernie Johnson and Pete Ferradoni, my own Colonel heroes, the boys of 65, Billy Holiday, Stan Dunkley, Joe Jewson, and after tonight, a whole bunch more. My teammates, my coaches, my teachers, my mentors, some more obvious than others. My Brattleboro, our Brattleboro, has been my crucible, has been my springboard, and is my legacy. In that moment, I came to understand that Brattleboro truly matters and always will. We really can come back home. And I, for one, could not be more proud. Given that sentiment, that where we come from matters, I'd like to share a Brattleboro story about a certain fellow Hall of Famer that's got a lot of play tonight. My story starts in the summer of 1968, when I was a rising 8th grader, of all things, when I first met Mr. Andy Nadowitz. Like many in this room from day one, excuse my language, he scared the hell out of me. Somehow, he had convinced my father into making me join his summer work crew, taking care of his beloved high school in Fort Dummer Fields. Come on, Dad. Yeah, Mr. Nadowitz was a taskmaster that has been alluded to this evening, and at $1.10 an hour, I hated my first job. Well, September of that year finally arrived, signaling the start of 8th grade football. I was going to be a tight end, no doubt about it. That was where all the real athletes played the game of football. That is, until my 8th grade coach, you guessed it, Andy Nadowitz, unapologetically informed me that I was going to be an offensive center. I was devastated. My career over before it even started. No doubt about it, I made the decision Mr. Nadowitz hated me. And after a lousy summer, the demolition to the O-line proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I resolved in that moment, at that time, to prove him wrong, no matter what. So fast forward to July 1970. I'm a rising sophomore. Our Babe Ruth baseball team had just beat Burlington for the Vermont state title, and we're moving on to the big time, the New England tournament in Nashua, New Hampshire. By that time, my crusade to prove Mr. Nadowitz wrong was in high gear. He had already made it clear to me that I would never achieve my goal, to play college football in the footsteps of my newest hero, Rob Farnham, now the offensive center at Williams College. Well, during that tournament, I was approached by a scout from Holy Cross College, who shared that he had heard really good things about me from an alum of his school, Ha, take that, Mr. Nadowich. People who mattered knew I had a collegiate future. And you know what made it even better? Mr. Nadowich himself was a Holy Cross man. Take that. Fast forward through my high school years. I played a lot of sports, studied hard, generally did everything possible to make sure my dream came true, even though Mr. Nadowich had made it his personal challenge to push me and push me down and challenge me at every turn. Only one thing confused me the whole time. I could never quite understand why he was at virtually every game I played if he hated me so much. But I showed him. Williams College recruited me to be an offensive center, just like Rob Farnham, Little Daddy. A coach from UNH showed up at the high school, sharing that he had been told to check out the big kid at Brattleboro. Take that, Mr. Nadowich. 1973, off to UNH I went, and boy, was I scared. Almost as much as whenever Mr. Nadowich was around. But I resolved to never give up, and I always kept that promise that I made to myself. As my college career reached a fever pitch with an awesome senior year, I believed once again that I had hopefully proved, Mr. Nadowich wrong. In November '77, I played what would turn out to be my last college football game against our hated rival, the University of Massachusetts. All the marbles on the line. Third straight conference title, a #1 national ranking, and a third straight national postseason playoff berth. On game day, our little 12,000-seat stadium was literally rocking, jam-packed with 25,000 screaming fans. The game was being televised across New England. It was a big deal. Surrounded by that sea of humanity, walking out onto the field for the coin toss, I was so excited, so pumped up, so proud. And yes, I will admit it. I was thinking, I wish Mr. Nadowich could see me now. The game was intense, the stuff of dreams. We played well, but sadly we lost. And just like that, my joyful journey was over. And just like my last high school game, I didn't want it to end ever. So an hour later, Mom, I apologize to this day, I'm still sitting in front of my locker. Long after our stadium had emptied, long after every one of my teammates had showered and moved on with their lives, I was alone in that locker room with my thoughts. When suddenly, I hear a solitary set of hard-soled shoes echoing down the hallway. No doubt our equipment manager, Jack French, coming to throw me out. The steps got closer and louder. Come on, Jack, I thought. Just leave me alone, man. Give me a break. This has been a tough day. But imagine my clueless surprise when into the room strides my avowed nemesis, Mr. Nadowich. This time, wearing a warm, if rare, compassionate smile, extending his hand for his trademark crushing handshake, sitting down next to me, engulfing me with a bear-like arm around my slumped shoulders, offering words I never imagined but will never forget. Hey, Vigno, keep your head up. You did good, kid. Brattleboro's proud of you. I am proud of you. You know, there's one thing I cannot remember about that story. I simply embarrassingly cannot remember what I said to Mr. Nadowich that November afternoon. Honestly, I'll guarantee I was tongue-tied that I probably couldn't say anything. He had a habit of doing that to me whenever he was around. So, in closing tonight, here's my chance. Mr. Nadowich, after all these years, thank you, sir. I understand now that you were my first advocate, my very first mentor. Back then, I was just too childish and too stubborn to recognize it. Thank you for caring for me. Thank you for teaching me to rise up and overcome all adversity from all corners and all comers. Thank you for believing in me, and thank you for going to bat for me time and time again. Thank you for inspiring me to aspire, even if I didn't quite understand your playbook back then. And thank you for always encouraging me to do better every day.
You're not a Pine Street guy.
But I look like one.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Nadowich, I have never forgotten you, and I never will. Thank you. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Coach, then, thank you now, and thank you forever. Tonight is an honor I will always cherish. This entire evening has been remarkable and memorable. This entire day, starting off at 12 o'clock with that unexpected invitation to go to the football game today. Being back home is awesome. Thank you. Stay safe, stay strong, and always go Colonels. I noticed that. We could start our own basketball.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys.
You're first class guy. Yeah. Wendy is going to introduce the late 60s evolution of women's athletics at Brattleboro Union High School. And you know, I was oblivious to it. And I was there. As a matter of fact, come here.
Well, I was listening to you.
If you look at the 1968 yearbook, you'll find this woman
And you.
and this man standing side by side, looking kind of goofy, having been voted in the senior class the most outstanding female athlete and male athlete. Now, doesn't she? I'm so sorry to say, not this part of it, the second part of it. Look how nice she looks. And look at me. Introduce your ladies.
Okay.
Will you?
Do that. Can I go behind this?
Oh, yeah, you can now.
I think Bill has done a terrific job, and I think we ought to give him a huge standing O. And so is everyone else who's spoken here tonight. I feel a little insignificant because I don't have any prepared speech. I had planned on having our former GAA president, who was Kathy Tripp Pohl, who was coming up from Pennsylvania to talk about this award. But anyway, when I first ran it by Bill, I thought he was a little bit skeptical about women's sports in 1967 and 68. You know, this is about winners. Well, we didn't win very many of those games. I'm not sure we won any. But when we moved into the high school as junior hires in 1962-ish, there were two gyms in the junior high. We thought this was great. There was a boys' gym and there was a girls' gym. And we'd get to play in the girls' gym whenever we wanted to. But we were wrong. The boys' gym, the girls' gym, and the senior high gym were all dedicated to boys' sports in that day and age. And we really, really thought we should fight hard and see if we couldn't be more than just watchers and cheerers, but we wanted to play too. So this is what we proceeded to hope would happen by working with the school administration, our parents, the teachers and coaches who were wonderful at that time. Barbara Hastings, who I think is still with us in, I think, the Rutland area. And Muriel Jondro, we remember, was there. They had to teach us the sports because we didn't, some of you will remember this, girls' sports changed and developed, especially basketball. We could only go half court back when we started playing basketball, even in that day and age. And we had to learn how to play full court when the varsity team was first organized in 67 and 68. So they were not only just teaching us and coaching us, they were fully teaching us because we hadn't played that
way before. I also want to remember some special people who aren't with us anymore. Gail Christmas was one of those people, Gail Goldsmith Christmas, and Deb Lord Millerick were both great players for us in that day and age. We had a full cast of characters lined up to come, but not everybody could come tonight, and I just wanted to read the names quickly for you. The people that are here: Kathy Miller-Bennett, Karen Davis, Jenny Milkey, Sandy Ware, and Lynette Hamilton are all here tonight. So stand up, gals. And I guess I just leave it on this note. One of the things that we were really proud and grateful to know about was the sportsmanship and the feeling of friendship, the comradeship has lasted all these years. And we're very glad that varsity sports was introduced in Brattleboro slightly before the Title IX, was passed. And 15 years later, this will segue into the next event, 15 years later, the girls varsity team became the state champion team in both field hockey and basketball. So they came a long way in a short while.
One thing I want to say is thank you for staying through the whole thing and our special recognition. We worked so hard for this, and we were so thrilled to reach varsity status. So thank you for sharing our joy.
And finally, a woman now, who I will say, I believe, is the greatest female athlete, you may disagree, in Brattleboro Union High School history. And she's going to be introduced by the self-proclaimed greatest speaker who has promised to bring the house down and needs to take the microphone out of the stand. None other than the Hilltopper, Karen Henry. There's your microphone.
Thank you. I would just like to mention that I texted Bill a couple of days ago and I said, Bill, I need some direction. What am I doing for Barb? What am I saying? Am I writing my own speech? He wrote me 2 things. Keep it to 3 minutes and don't mess up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I owe you one.
All right. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce the final Hall of Fame inductee of the night. I met Barb Barrett over 15 years ago, but I need to say right off the bat, I didn't go to high school with Barb. I didn't go to college with Barb. I never faced Barb on the field hockey field, the basketball court, or the softball field. I've never actually seen Barb play. However, I knew about Barb Barrett well before I met her, within weeks of working at BUHS. As someone who is passionate about athletics myself, it's almost impossible to be associated with BUHS and not know the accomplishments of Barb. After hearing her name a few times, I finally went to the wizard of BUHS athletics, Bill Holliday, who's also notorious for telling the hard truth. And I said, hey, Bill, this Barb Barrett, is what they say true? He looked at me and said, Henri, that's what he called me, Henri, she was the real deal. And that's when I knew Barb Barrett was a legend. You can see in the program Barb's many accomplishments and accolades at both BUHS and Assumption College. She set records, she won championships, She earned Most Valuable Player honors multiple times. Clearly, she is worthy of an Athletic Hall of Fame induction. As I look back at the athletic career of Barb, the incredible numbers she put up, I think of the years of practice, games, injuries, and sacrifices. And I have to ask, why? Why would she go through all of it, day in and day out, year after year? The answer, because Barb loves the game. And how, after never seeing her play ever, do I know that? Because I know Barb now. For me, that's where I've had the pleasure of seeing athlete Barb become the coach and mentor Barb. She has taken her accomplishments, her experiences, and most importantly, her love of playing, and brought it to young women that look up to her, are inspired by her, and play for her. Barb and I have been coaching together for about 10 years, and in that time, we have run thousands of practices, coached multiple teams, played hundreds of games, complained about many foul calls, and have received exactly one technical foul. Barb. But through it all, Barb the athlete, who became Barb the coach, has passed on her expertise, her passion, her commitment, and her love of the game. And to me, that is the mark of a true Hall of Fame athlete. Yes, Barb Barrett was BUHS's first female 1,000-point scorer and led her team to the school's only state championship. Yes, she was the first player at Assumption to score 300 points in a season and named the team's MVP her senior year. Yes, she struck out one time in 4 years while playing softball for Brattleboro. All amazing and incredibly admirable. However, I would argue what you're about to hear is equally amazing and admirable. I'm going to read you what one of her former basketball players, who now plays for St. Michael's College, said about Barb now. She has been so inspirational to me, knowing what she did as an athlete in high school and college. But it is more than that. Barb is amazing because she saw my potential and pushed me beyond what I thought I was capable of. Her true love and passion for the game shined through every practice and every game, and not only encouraged me, but it was infectious to everyone around her. She made me love to play. Barb Barrett makes people love to play. And isn't that what athletics should be about? A love to play? Barb Barrett, you are a legend, a record setter and a record breaker, a champion, a coach, a mentor, and a friend. And now officially a BUHS Hall of Fame athlete. But most important, you are a Hall of Fame human being. Congratulations, Barb. I can think of no one more deserving of this honor.
Well, I have to follow that. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you, everybody. Again, Bill, I know this has been a dream of yours for decades, and finally it's come to fruition. So thank you.
Thank you.
One thing Karen said is, I think what is the most important thing to me is that I loved to play. And from the time I was old enough to leave my yard, that's what I did. I followed my brother, and we used to play wiffle ball with the little wooden bats and a golf ball. Ergo, why I only struck out once. If I could hit a wiffle ball with a small stick, I probably had a pretty good chance of hitting a softball with a big bat. So from that time, I loved to play. And for me, I came into high school and I didn't think about these barriers because you had already broken them down for us. So thank you. I was able to do all those things without having to think about fighting for it because the fight had already been done for me. So thank you, thank you. My family has always been incredibly important to me. They supported me. My parents went to every game I had when I was in high school and when I was in college. And I remember something my mom said to me after the last softball game in my college career. They were driving home and they looked at each other and said, "Now what are we going to do?" Like they had spent decades following all of us in all of our academic and athletic events, and now they didn't have it anymore. But that was what our family was about. Our family was about sports and the love of it. So I wish the one thing I could say for kids today is that they could go back to that and find that love and passion like we had. Everybody here tonight had that passion. So I want to thank everybody. Again, thank my family and all of the wonderful inductees here who have incredible careers. And I'm going to tell one story. It's very short though. When I was in 5th grade, I was in the Pepsi-Cola hot shot competition. And I won in Brattleboro, and then you had to go to the New England. And that was down at Boston Garden. And it was at halftime of a Celtics game. They were playing the Houston Rockets. And so we packed in the car, my mom wouldn't go because she was afraid of crowds, so Mom stayed home. It's my sisters and Dave McGinn. He went with us. And I can remember performing at halftime, and long story short, I won that competition. And after the game, when we were leaving, I got a ride on the shoulders of Dave McGinn out of the Boston Garden. Like, and now here I am in the same Hall of Fame classes as Dave. So thanks for that ride, and I can guarantee you couldn't do it today. So thank you all. Have a good night.
So let's get everybody up here with a plaque.
Yeah, hang on. Stay.
Oh, I can.
Before we say goodnight, what an incredible group of people in this inaugural Hall of Fame. You have set the bar so high with your speaking as well, all of you. It's been wonderful. I appreciate everything and everybody who helped with this. One person doesn't do a thing like this. From the Johnson girls, LJ and Patty Wallier over there, who checked you in, all the way to the bottom of the barrel, the Pine Street guy. And that's me. I am going to ask that the newly inducted people come up here with your plaque so we can get a couple of photographs for historical purposes. And I have 5 programs from tonight and a couple of pens. I'd like you to all sign those, autograph those, also for historical purposes. This is a historic night. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you.